was a dramatic end to stage 4.
There's been a crash and there's two Euskaltel riders down and Tyler Farrer. Oh, there's been a massive pile up there and that's taken
One man triumph through the adversity.
What's the second wheel? Because Greipel is going now as Martel Kittel comes at a run. Greipel is heading for his second win here in Tanunda. He's going to get the record of 13 stage wins.
With a headwind, the last 2 kilometers was pretty messy, and I think we did a perfect lead out again.
So Greipel makes history with victory in Tanunda, but it's Geraint Thomas who remains in the Oka jersey.
You know, first race of the season, it starts to take its toll, but we tried, but that didn't quite work, but pulled down to Willunga.
Next, it's the Queen stage. Will it prove to be the decider once more?
I think it's going to be a great showdown. Let's try to hang on the climb and sprint hard.
That was the race decider last year.
Definitely going to be an exciting race.
Is this the day the 2013 Santos Tour Down Under is won?
Yeah, somebody's gone down in the middle. Goss is clear and Greipel is on his wheel. Cameron Meyer at 23 years of age. They've got him 1-2 on the line.
Hello and welcome to Channel 9's Wide World of Sports. We've brought you some beautiful pictures this week, but how good is that? That is Snapper Point, and we're going to come along the coastline here, Aldinga Beach. It's Australia Day, and this is Stage 5, the Jayco Stage 5 of the Santos Tour Down Under. The weather, well, absolutely delightful. Partly cloudy, 24 degrees, a breeze about, a little bit overcast as we mentioned, but it is superb. We saw the easier part of the course, if I could dare say it. This is where it gets nice and tough. This is on the way up to Old Willunga Hill. 3 kilometres of blood, sweat and tears from the town of Willunga up to Old Willunga Hill. That is why it's called the Battle of Old Willunga Hill. Hello and welcome to Phil and Paul today. It's been great all week, and here we are at Stage 5. It's really getting to the business end of the section.
Very much so, after we saw the bunch sprint yesterday, and it was a real fighting battle. Riders falling all over the place, but the same winner, Andre Greipel, crossing the line in Tanunda. It meant everybody finished in the same time. So they go down to the Battle of the Old Willunga Hill today with a lot of riders, Paul, who could still win this race.
Well, the suspense is still there because there are still 20 riders within 30 seconds of the overall lead. So it's very difficult to pick a winner. There will be a lot of guys looking to challenge, especially I would think Team Radio Shack. They've got 3 riders placed in the top 10 and they're all youngsters.
Okay, well, let's have a look at how the week has gone. We've all loved it. I trust you've enjoyed it at home. Take a peek. Stage 1 from Prospect to Lobethal rolled out in earnest, and it was little surprise to see the Uni SA team launch an immediate attack.
So Jordan Kirby, 10 points in the bag for the Skoda King of the Mountains competition.
World champion Philippe Gilbert surprised many.
As they line up for the finish in Lobo. Oh, my goodness me, he's not even going to get the 3 seconds. What a sprint finish. It's all too familiar. As Greipel goes for win number 12 historically. Look at the distance here as he roars clear. Hucerovic looks to be in second place. Greipel joins Robin McEwen with 12 historic wins.
Andre Greipel was the familiar figure in Oka, but the second stage was no place for the sprinters.
Oh, been a crash.
Oh, la, la.
Sorry.
It was a painful climb for one local rider.
I'm wondering if it's actually Calvin Watson there.
From Team Sky, Geraint Thomas relished the twisting climb.
Just look at the crowd here. Geraint Thomas gets the points. He's got the Skoda jersey. There's the move. They weren't ready for it, and Geraint Thomas has gone early to beat them. And Thomas, who started it all, is finishing it off, and Sky are on top again.
Now in Oka, the Welshman was on fire, and on stage 3, the temperatures soared to almost 40 degrees. A pair of unrelated Australian Clarks took up the race challenge.
Nobody interested up here. And Will Clark takes another 3-second time bonus, so that's 6 for him.
But on the run into the finish, a new star was born.
As he comes up to the walls of the line, he's going to have to hang on as Thomas tries to break through. but the youngster, Tom Slagter, stole the show.
No surprise to see a Uni SA rider lead the early charge on stage 4 to Tanunda.
Well, the second jersey is Uni SA, and that's Damien Housen. And the other one, believe it or not, Paul, is Philippe Gilbert, the world champion.
Damien Housen took full advantage of his time with the world champ.
Philippe Gilbert probably said to him, look, you went over the King of the Mountains in first place. I'll take this one, so at least I've got some beer money for tonight.
The pair was finally caught, and as the race reached its climax, dangerous crosswinds caused havoc to the fast finishing peloton.
Two Euskaltel riders down, and Tyler Farrer is down there, the sprinter from Garmin. Oh, there's been a massive pile up there, and that's taken out a number of the Orica Green Edge riders that have gone down on the right of the road. Greg Henderson trying to lead out Greipel. Henderson is going, and there's a little bit of bumper shoulders with Kittel there, just trying to stay on course there. But watch now, watch the second wheel, because Greipel is going now as Martel Kittel comes at a run. Greipel is heading for his second win here in Tanunda.
Greipel securing his record-breaking 13th stage win, but it was Skyrider Geraint Thomas still in Oka.
Quite a stressful day, but you know, I'm used to a bit of argy-bargy, so that helped. But the boys were great as well. You know, we stayed near the front with about 10k to go, and yeah, kept me out of trouble, so that was good.
Geraint Thomas is going to be hoping that Oka jersey presentation goes his way at the back end of today as well.
5 seconds advantage over the young upstart Tom Slagter here, who got a real chance on the climb today. Javier Moreno from Spain also riding well, and Ben Hermans from Belgium on the Radio Shack team. He could be a big dark horse on this one. Looking further down, there aren't many Australians there, Paul. In fact, we've only got one, Adam Hansen overall.
Yeah, well, watch out for Remy Wilco Kelderman in 13th position. He's only looking for 15 seconds. The interesting thing is they're also very close together. It's all, for everyone in this bike race today, it's D-Day. You've got to come out with game plan.
All week we've been talking about Andre Greipel, the gorilla. He's won 2 stages. He won the Classic. He won't be featuring today. No. How do you see it go?
Well, it's always been decisive on this climb because it's 3 kilometres. It's a tough climb. It will be packed with people. It's Australia Day. They're all out enjoying themselves. And, of course, the men who want to win this race know they've really got a podium at the top of the hill like they did a year ago, because that's what happened then.
The first part of the race is a softening up of the opposition, if you like. It's going to be very, very difficult and fast around Aldinga Beach. A lot of people out there were probably getting their barbies out and watching the bike race as it goes by. But it's not just the one ascent of Wollonga Hill today. It's the second ascent which makes it that much more difficult.
This is last year here, and this was very decisive. In the end, the first 3 riders to the top were the first 3 riders on the podium in Adelaide 24 hours later. Alejandro Valverde, the great Spanish rider, was mixed in with this one, as was Geraint Thomas, and they went head-to-head for the finish. In the end, it was very close. It will go to the Spanish rider Valverde. They will go into the last day completely equal on time, but Geraint would take the race on countback 24 hours later. And the rider who finished third, Machado, he would have got third place on the podium as well. Now look at this. This is live pictures now at the start, and this is Geraint Thomas. He's in the hot seat. He knows he is. Paul thinks he's up for it. We'll find out very soon. They're just before the call to the line. And this is the man who might take him on, Tom Slagter.
Yes, just looking for 5 seconds. Everyone very nervous. He's got a teammate there. You might just have noticed, Jack Bobridge. This could be an outsider. Javier Moreno from the Spanish Movistar team. They are very solid on the climbs, but also this man is too, because Ben Hermans in 4th place is only looking for 8 seconds.
Okay, what we need is your quick prediction of how it works.
Well, as we look at Jack Bobridge there, he might consolidate his lead. He took that King of the Mountains jersey away from the man yesterday, Geraint Thomas. This rider, well, Paul's favourite here, I think. Paul, Geraint can't win the race, but he might win the stage.
Well, Phil, let's not forget it is Australia Day today. I'm going for Simon Gerrans to win the stage, but I'm also going for Geraint Thomas to win the bike race overall.
Thank you, gentlemen. We look forward to your commentary. And, of course, we're live today on Channel 9. We're looking forward to the call. It will be pivotal. So, Phil and Paul, we'll go to commentary now. These are our helicopter shots. This is Jayco Stage 5 in McLaren Vale to Old Wollonga Hill. It's the longest stage, 151.5 kilometres. Of course, it is Australia Day. And a little congratulations to all those receiving awards today in the honours list. Di Langmack in particular, a lady I know who's done so much work for charity. Congratulations to you. It is Australia Day at the Santos Tour Down Under. Great to have your company.
talking. Looking at the riders down on the start line now, and this is a big day. They know it is. It is the battle, yes, but we start flat first of all. Just Mike Turter there, sitting on the car, waiting for the off. Passive moment this, just before the gun goes off, because this race is usually full on. It usually has a very quick start as they head out towards the town of Wollonga, but they won't be going up the hill this time. Let's have a look where they go. McLaren Vale to the old Wollonga Hill. Longest stage. This is the Jayco Stage 5, 151.5 kilometres. It is the longest stage of the race and undoubtedly the toughest. As we leave McLaren Vale, as we did a year ago, down the Aldinga Road onto the beach, round Snapper Point, where we'll have the Jayco sprint points, through the hydration station of Powerade in Kell Street, down by the finish line. And then after 3 circuits, we make 2. The second one up the hill will be the most important. That takes us to the finishing line.
That's where the decider is bound to happen. Everybody celebrating Australia Day here this afternoon, waiting for the gun to fire and this bike race to get itself underway. The 3 starting laps around Aldinga Beach are very, very fast indeed. And everybody knows that, but they'll be looking for the very early breakaway if they can. But everybody there lined up. All of the bike riders today, Phil, have been talking about this stage. We always talk about the Battle of Old Wollonga Hill, and that's what it's all going to be about this afternoon.
Well, we've got Leanne Bignell there, the new Minister of South Australian Tourism and indeed of Sport and Recreation, getting them underway. He's a great fan of cycling as well, as they now roll away, and the fluffy clouds giving way to the blue sky we've come to expect on this stage here in South Australia. No rush to the start. They're not allowed to pass that neutralised vehicle. It's taking them out to the start line and the 0 kilometre where the riders will then be given the green light. As always, Paul, we come into this stage with just a few seconds separating the top riders, and we really expect them to open up a little bit of a gap now when we get out onto the climb of the old Wollonga Hill.
Well, the real climbers, Phil, they would like to have a very rapid start to this race. They'd like the race to be toughened up before they get to the ascent of Old Wollonga Hill. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the attacks coming very thick and fast. In the past, there's very often been an early breakaway of 5 or 6 riders, which eventually the main field have managed to chase down right down towards the end. Everybody wants to win at the top of this climb. It's so prestigious a place, and I'm sure that in the back of his mind, Simon Gerrans, having had a little breathing problem over the first couple of days of this race, will be looking to try and get some redemption with a possible victory after his 2nd place on this stage last year.
Mike Turter there, getting ready to call the flag in. The Olympic Team Pursuit, or part of the quartet that won the Olympic gold medal in Los Angeles for Australia in 1984. And it looks to me as though the riders from the UniSA getting ready to attack from the gun again. Well, the weather is good today. It's perfect for a bike race, 24 degrees. Winds are running at around about south-southwest at 20 kilometres per hour. So they're going to whip around because this course changes all directions. In the backdrop now is the coast where we'll be going down there shortly. Straight away, the flag is in, the race is on, and guess what? UniSA are thinking of attacking again.
Well, it's a kind of a figure of an 8 course, if you like. The 3 first laps around Aldinga Beach, and then you've got the 2 circuits around Old Wollonga Hill. And yes, everybody wants to get out on the attack. That's Luke Durbridge on the front, the Australian national champion in the individual time trial and in the road race. And again, UniSA, I think the orders have gone out to these youngsters on this development squad here from Australia to get in that early breakaway, keep the pressure on.
Now, in the past, we have seen a breakaway get clear and get reeled in before the mountains, but takes the pressure off the peloton. We expect riders to try and get clear. They've got 3 circuits now of Aldinga Beach before we go up the mountain for the first time, and then 1 full circuit, and the next time up the mountain is the finish through the beautiful McLaren Vale vineyards here. It's where the vines meet the sea. There is the little check. 3 circuits, first of all, are looking pretty calm. And then we hit the wall at the far right and we climb it twice. 2nd time, the finish.
Well, it'll be important for one man, Jack Bobridge, who leads the Skoda King of the Mountains classification, to try and get himself some points there. There are big points at the top of Old Wollonga Hill, which we go over on 2 occasions.
I'm just looking at all the tents on the roadside there. This race has caught on over its 15 years for sure. The start is into a headwind, and this is probably why we're not seeing too many riders push away here. It's a tough beginning as we go through the McLaren Vale winery. The grapes on the right and the left of the race for the moment. Pulled it out into a long straight line. Bit difficult, Paul, to get off the front when they're in a headwind.
No, it certainly is very tortuous in a situation like this, because we've got a lot of breeze coming in off the sea. But as always, you can just see it's the Uni SA squad who are very, very keen to try and get away. That's Adam Fellon who's making the move there, number 181, chased immediately by 71, and that Jack Bobridge, and he's from just down the road.
Yes, he is just down the road. He's also the leader in the Skoda King of the Mountains. A little while before he'd be called in for that climb, because we've got the 3 laps of Aldinga Beach here. But Jack Bobridge is also on the same team as Tom Schlachter, who is the rider who is in 2nd place overall. So he's got a bit of a double job to do today, Jack Bobridge. He's got to look after the man in 2nd, while at the same time try and win the King of the Mountains title. Orica Greenedge starting to move on. There's the ochre jersey, number 37. And I believe we spoke this morning to Geraint Thomas. Let's see what he had to say this morning.
Well, I think obviously there'll be a breakaway, and then it'll all come down to last 2 times up Wollonga. So I'm sure teams are going to attack first time up, but I think if the boys are riders they have been, and myself, then I think we'll have a lot going into the last lap, and then yeah, last time up the climb, then it's just hell for leather and see what we got.
Well, Geraint Thomas doesn't sound like a man who's frightened of the day of racing today. 2 gold medals last year, 1 in the World Track Championships, 1 in the Olympic Games on the track. Now he's a full-on road racing cyclist, and this would be a huge victory for him if he were to pull it off.
Now bear in mind, Phil, it's no surprise to see him in this kind of form. He's been training since November. In fact, to get away from the northern climbs, he moved down to South Africa and was training around Johannesburg in the end of November, and he's slimmed down, as he puts it in his own words, away from his track fat, and dropped a couple of kilos during the winter months, very much like Bradley Wiggins did once he'd had his 2 Olympic gold medals way back in Beijing. Bradley Wiggins slimmed down by 7 kilos from the track rider that he was to the winner of the Tour de France last year.
A bit of switching and changing at the front here. Jens Maurice trying to get Orica Greenedge on the move. We also go Anthony Giacopo of the Uni SA squad, former circuit race champion a year ago of Australia, also trying to mix at the front. They're all testing the water at the moment, trying to get a little group to pull clear of the field, but I have to say they're being closely marked. Everybody not prepared to let the gaps open just at the moment here.
Well, no, you see when you see a main field stretched out into a very long line like that, that means the hammer is down. The red flag has gone up, and that's like waving a flag at a bull here for these riders on this penultimate stage this afternoon. Everybody knows that over the last few years a breakaway has formed over the first 3 laps around the beach, and that's why everybody wants to get into that breakaway here this afternoon.
Now they constantly change direction here. The wind has gone from the left of our screens now, pushing the riders over to the right of the road. They started in the headwinds, and now we've got 7 riders trying to get away. Still a fair way to go. We've just accomplished just over 3.5 kilometers so far on the day. 2, 4, 6, 7 riders trying to go clear at the moment. Well, they should average around 42 kilometers an hour on this circuit today, Paul, shouldn't they? So about 3 and a bit hours of racing.
Yeah, I would put it down to about 3.5 hours in the saddle here this afternoon, but looking at speeds like this, they might even push it closer to 44, 45 kilometers an hour average by the end of the day. Still, everybody's looking for that move, and you can see the order has gone out because there's a number of different teams looking for the breakaway. Just getting onto the back there, Luke Durbridge. Since Simon Gerrans had that very bad day when they went up Corkscrew Hill a couple of days ago, he's been deciding to look for the breakaway. There's Bobridge, also number 71. He wants to make sure that if the breakaway goes, he's going to be with it.
It might be a good move by Bobridge here. He knows there probably will be a breakaway, and that breakaway will more than likely be caught on the old Wollonga Hill. But if he gets 1 top of the climb and 16 points the first time up, then he'll win the King of the Mountains. And he might be thinking that way, you know, because he knows he's not going to be getting the points on the finishing line when we're going for the win second time up.
I'm pretty sure he's made that as his game plan here, that the Santos Tour Down Under this year, to try and get himself for that chance if he can. Jesse Sargent coming across there from Radio Shack now. Radio Shack, I think, are in a very strong position today. They've got 3 riders placed in the top 10 in the overall standings, and they will want to toughen this race up to see if they can crack the armour of Geraint Thomas.
Luke Durbridge, Australian road and time trial champion, flicks his right arm and says, come on through and give me a hand. And there's a gap beginning to open a little bit now as Durbridge gives way, and the rider he moved into is Danilo Wyss of Switzerland on the right there, and number 63 now making his move. That's Jay McCarty of the Saxo Tinkoff squad from Denmark.
It is so difficult to get into this breakaway, and in fact it looks like the breakaway is starting to form, but 1 or 2 teams have missed out. You can see the bunch have spread out over the main field. One team missing out is the team from Astana. Those are the riders with the turquoise jerseys, and one guy's come to the front of the peloton because his team manager has obviously given him the nod and said, look, we need to be in that breakaway, close it down right now.
There is a reaction. Astana are bringing on the chase, the team in those light blue jerseys back there, and it looks like they're having a little bit of an effect here. This is the hardest part in the first half hour of racing, is the riders to try and remind the legs they're back in action and to have to race right under the limit of their ability to crack the elastic. It's Danilo Wyss who's charging through on the front there. There's 9 riders. Jess Sargent just got across. He sat on the back of that lead group as we start to move away now from McLaren Vale.
We're already in the town of Wollonga. They've come out very, very quickly. In a little while, they'll find themselves coming up here, lining themselves up for Wollonga Hill. The average speed, by the way, into a block headwind so far is 45.5 kilometers an hour.
No wonder it's hurting. That's Jose Herrada at the front from the Movistar team. He's had a good race here. He was the rider that almost spoiled it for the sprinters on day 1 when he launched an incredible attack that hurt 1 or 2 of them and put minutes in them when we were going into Lobethal. Well, that group, I think, Paul's getting a bit too big.
Yeah, it is too big. For a group to work well together and to cooperate, it needs to be not much bigger than 8 riders, and you'll find there's a lot of passengers in a breakaway group like this, and that feels as if you've got a bunch of sandbags sitting on the back. In fact, it has all just come back together under our eyes.
So as they make the turn, this is the area where they will go straight on after they've completed 3 laps of the Aldinga circuit. Then they'll go straight through Wollonga and up the hill. But for the moment, it's a sharp right turn, and the riders at the back are going to find it pretty hard when they accelerate, because you can see how far away the leaders of the bunch are.
Yeah, it's always a bad place to ride at the back end of a group like this, because you get an elastic yo-yo type effect. You actually have to slow down a lot more to cue to get round the corners, then accelerate even more than the guys at the front to keep in contact with the main field. They're now going to move away from Wollonga and head out to the beach.
Well, Jay McCartney leading the charge at the head of the peloton, which is now in angry mood as they head back towards Aldinga Beach. Just a small group of riders prizing open very, very gently a gap. They're picking up the tailwind now as they return to the bottom end of the circuit. They're now carrying on in a little way here as they try. There's a few more getting across. This could become too big. The riders who have got ambitions to win this race will keep a very close eye on the numbers of the riders going across the gap, making sure that one of the high overall standings don't slip into a good move.
But they've also got to conserve as much energy as possible, which is why a few moments ago we saw Geraint Thomas sitting fairly close to the front end of the main field. This is an Astana rider, and he's a very good individual time trialist, by the way, from Kazakhstan. Maxim Iglinski getting across the gap.
Matthew Goss there, number 4, also trying to get into the action. He would be a big candidate for victory if it came to a sprint, but remember, it's uphill today, which I would make 101 the most likely to succeed if this breakaway was to get away.
They're all absolutely hammering at the front to try and establish this breakaway. Uni SA have got a rider who's just popped across the gap there to make himself present. As you can see, top, there's Kohler, the Swiss national champion in the red jersey with the white cross over it. I would say we're looking at about 50 kilometres an hour here, Phil. They really are hammering along.
Peloton not letting them go. The backdrop of the vineyards of McLaren Vale. These riders picking up a very, very quick tailwind just for the moment and making the most of it as they push speeds up over 50 kilometres an hour, over 30 miles an hour. A gap for the first time, and Matthew Goss, once a winner of the great classic Milan-San Remo, has taken the drive through, followed by Iglinski there. Now it's Thomas de Gendt. As Thomas de Gendt is on the front. Well, we talked to him before the race started about the battle for the overall classification.
I think if you really want to win, you have to be within half a minute of the first rider, and then the guys like Gerrans or Gilbert, yeah, they can be half a minute before you, or you can catch them. But it's for a good result, you just have to be in the top 20 every day, and then maybe you can get a shot at the win of the general classification.
Good thinking there, Thomas. He was right about one thing, because there are 20 riders within half a minute of Geraint Thomas. But sadly, Philippe Gilbert, the world champion, and Simon Gerrans, they lost time on the second day of this race, so they're out of the hunt for the overall. So Maxim Iglinski, the rider, tagged at the back. Number 4 is Matthew Goss. Just in front of Goss there is the champion of Switzerland, Tyler. And it looks to me as though Jack Brodbridge might be in this move as well.
Well, we've only been, Phil, in the saddle for 16 minutes, but they've probably already done about probably around about 12 or 13 kilometres. Brodbridge is in the group there. He's in the white jersey with the green spots on it as the leader of the Skoda King of the Mountains competition. And watch out for Maxim Iglinski, because you know, he doesn't win very many bike races, but last year he was the winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which is the oldest one-day classic on the race calendar.
Well, this is a hard-working group that's getting itself together. Gossi just checking over his shoulder there at the bottom of our picture to see if they're making any headway. 71 is the leader in the Skoda King of the Mountains. There he just passes through our picture there. And I have to say that he's tried every move, and he may have found the one that's starting to go clear. That's Jack Brodbridge.
Former Italian national champion has got himself into this move as well for Movistar, Giovanni Visconti. Most of these riders are a fair way down in the overall standings, and I'm sure that Team Sky will be doing their permutations and calculations to try and figure out who might be at all dangerous. This is Visconti, the former national champion of Italy. He's a good 3.5 minutes down in the standings.
Yes, he had a bad crash. He went to hospital with a head injury on day 2, but he came back next day and he rode very well. He's okay.
To check out this average speed from kilometre 6 to kilometre 13, we've done an average speed of almost 53 kilometres an hour. That's 33 miles an hour. Is that inside the speed limit?
I think he's probably just outside down this road. There's the peloton. They're far from giving up the chase. The group is to the left of our picture here. They're still working. It may not be the one to go, this one, as the peloton are matching them wheel turn for wheel turn. You can just see the speed of these riders that they've passed down below there.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they don't want the big group to get clear.
Well, they haven't got clear yet. The elastic is stretching, but it's not snapping. So 6 riders trying to establish a breakaway now. It was started by Manuel Aburo, Adam Phelan and Will Clark, 2 Australians on Australia Day, moving clear. But there's a few more emissaries being dispatched from the head of the peloton. That's Simon Clark going clear now, and also trying to join him is Zach Dempster, 102 there, 182 rather. And the other rider trying to close down that gap is William Bonnet of the FDJ team, which is French. I guess we'll call him Willem Bonnet.
He's a good sprinter, and obviously the sprinters will have a go to try and get in a breakaway on a day like this. They know they haven't really got much chance of winning at the top of a climb, but what it does is it puts pressure on the rest of the race later on and gives the guys in the breakaway a slightly easier ride. But still, there's no reaction from the main field. They're pretty much spread right across the road, and I think it's truce time for the moment.
This is a good sign. They've got 3 riders up front, and they're going to build a nice little interesting group here. None of these riders are too important to the race lead. Simon Clark, last year King of the Mountains in nothing less than the Tour of Spain, one of the big 3 races in the world. just scurrying across with him here is 131, and that is Willem Bonnet of FDJ.
Well, they've just got to try and get across the gap there, and if this group does start to form, I think we'll start to see the establishment of the first big breakaway of the day. But the question is, how will the groups behind work? This is not a group that really has to be chased down by Geraint Thomas, but there's a lot of pride, I think, in the leaders of this bike race overall, Phil, when it comes to trying to win the stage to the top of Willunga Hill.
Zach Dempster will give us 2 riders in this breakaway from the Uni SA. They've been in every early attack since this race began, and they haven't had the rewards they might have expected yet. Clark giving it his best shot here, anxious to drag Orica Greenedge back into the pictures. Heading down to the beautiful Aldinga Beach here. It really is stunning coastline on this part of South Australia.
The speed is absolutely remarkable at the start here. We've been tickling 50 kilometres an hour pretty much since the start of this race, and now they start to pick up the crowds.
8 riders have gone through, 3 riders trying to get on, making 11 leaders. The peloton not that far behind. At the end of the day, they've reacted. The average speed since the race start at 18 kilometres covered at 47.8 kilometres an hour. They really have got off to a fast start.
And I tell you what, the main field, Phil, are not letting this breakaway go clear, because they're not very much more than about 15 seconds in arrears. This is the Aldinga Beach. I'm sure that's going to be full a little bit later on, with a lot of people setting up their barbies, because it's a wonderful day here in Australia, on Australia Day. It's a wonderful day for a bike race too.
It is. Now this time we go along to Snapper Point, this time through. No sprint this time, but there will be on the next circuit through Snapper Point. Embrace the coast culture. We're on Aldinga Beach. You can drive the whole family onto the beach. Part of the Fleurieu Peninsula, Aldinga Beach is one of the area's many safe swimming beaches in the area here. You can fish for your own food. You can pack a picnic. You can relax in the beautiful surroundings of Aldinga Beach. And that's where the riders are at the moment in the Santos Tour Down Under, still trying to establish what we always call the early morning breakaway, although it's heading up towards lunchtime. And 2 riders from the same team. Thomas de Gent is at it again on the Vacon Soleil, and this time he's got a teammate for company in Thomas Maszinski, the Polish rider.
Well, Thomas de Gent came to this race with ambitions of finding himself a podium position, but unfortunately for him, he missed out on the big stage over Corkscrew Hill, and you can see the wind rippling through those flags there. It really is a strong breeze coming in off the ocean here this afternoon, but the crowds have turned out in their tens of thousands.
Well, this is where we will next time around enact the Jayco Sprint, where there is a small time bonus of 3 seconds, and that is crucial when you've got only 6 seconds covering the top 3 riders. So that's next time around, as the riders now go through and head out towards McLaren Vale, where they started from this morning, and complete the first of 3 circuits before we go up Willunga Hill.
Well, there's still a few riders trying to scuttle across the gap there, but Team Sky, you can see the 2 black and blue jerseys right on the front, are having none of that so far this afternoon. They're being very, very attentive. When you're in a team and you believe in your leaders, they probably believe in Geraint Thomas, it makes you able to push your body a little bit further, to do the job, to look after the main field, to control the pacemaking at the main field, because you're thinking about giving an easy ride to your leader, so that once he gets down towards the end, he's got a good chance of getting clear.
Sky's Luke Rowe doing the pace from the peloton, wiped out those pursuers. We've now got 5 riders trying to establish themselves a little lead down there. And that might be a better number to ease back the pace on the peloton and see if this group can start to move away.
There's 127 kilometres to go down to the finish. This is a small chase group trying to get off the front here, and they've just joined the 2 riders from Vacon Soleil, so that's going to make now a 7-man leading group.
Now getting up there in this group is Koen de Kort in the white jersey, going through at the front. He's a Dutchman on the Argus Shimano team.
A tall rider from Uni SA with the green and gold bands around his middle is 187. That's Calvin Watson again. He's been looking for the breakaway group this afternoon, Phil, and it's been a very, very difficult one to establish.
He may have got it this time around. Number 14 there is Klaus Lodewijk of Belgium as we've moved along the first section. We're heading on the second circuit very shortly. We've got to get back to McLaren Vale to start the second circuit, but this might be a more manageable situation here.
Well, once they move away from the coastline and start to head back inland, they'll get a little bit of respite, Phil, because they'll pick up a tailwind for around about 5 or 6 kilometres before they start to line up towards heading back to McLaren Vale, where they started from this morning.
Most interesting rider in this breakaway is Thomas de Gent. He's number 101 on the right. The rider from Orica Green Edge is the big frame of Jens Muris. Calvin Watson, the youngest rider in one of the youngest riders in the race. He might in fact be the youngest rider at 20 years of age, just 2 weeks ago. And he's in this breakaway and flying the flag for Australia, one of the youngest men in the race flying the flag.
Yes, but he's not shown any fear at all for the reputation of some of the best bike riders in the world here. He's gone out on the attack on a number of occasions. I have a feeling we might just now go into a lull before the storm now, because just quickly looking through the numbers of these riders, none of them really look as if they're any danger at all in the overall standings. Just getting a quick glimpse. Well, going along the beach there, Phil, for 6 kilometres from kilometre 19 to 25. The average speed was 51.2 kilometres an hour. Been a fast race today.
They're absolutely flying, and it's because they swept up all the boys in between and in that big bunch. This group was making some progress, and it might now have itself a little bit of respite here. It might start to get away. And it was started, don't forget, by number 101 and his teammate 103, Thomas Masinski and Thomas de Gent. So as they started now, is this the break to set the pattern as the day starts to unwind? We've certainly had the fastest start so far this week on the Santos Tour Down Under, and we've got 6 or 7 riders going clear. Peloton chasing a breakaway of 7 now, with the best placed rider up there, Koen de Kort, 2:52 up. So they'll allow it to go, but how far before they react to that? Well, Sky on the front here, just enjoying a little journey around the McLaren Vale wine growing area, coming up from the Aldinga Beach. Now, this is time out. It's time to turn the cameras off, I think, for the moment.
No, absolutely. That's what they call in the sport of professionals racing a natural break.
So that's a good sign, though, to us that they've seen this group of 6 or 7 riders go clear, and they are happy to allow them to go. Now, Koen de Kort is the Dutchman in the all-white strip here. He's best placed, but 2 minutes 52. He's going to have to work pretty hard to open up that sort of a gap. And then you would see a reaction. There's Calvin Watson there, 187. Just behind him on the left, Orica Green Edge has got a man in it, in Jens Muris. And these riders all happy to work away together. Number 14, Klaas Lodewijk. He's a Belgian rider on Team BMC. De Kort, he's ridden very well. He loves Australia, the Dutchman. He comes over very early. He was here before Christmas and enjoyed quite a stay here, training in Victoria, in Melbourne, down the famous Beach Road circuit, and now he's in the breakaway, so he's got good legs. He must be feeling very strong to have gone for an early move like this today.
Well, once the breakaway has now been formed, these riders have to collaborate together. They have to share the pacemaking, try and build themselves up an advantage, because they do know that once we start to approach the final big lap around Aldinga, the main field will start to accelerate and will start to set themselves up for the first approach. The time gap has stretched out very, very quickly to 1 minute and 52 seconds. And where have all the riders gone? Well, I think we know that. They've all stopped at the side of the road for a little natural break. And next time we get a time check, Phil, it's going to be up to around about the 3-minute margin, I would say.
Well, they'll reform. Looking at Jack Bodbridge there. Well, at the start this morning, he was talking to us, and he told us he was more interested in his teammate Tom Slechta today.
Yeah, it's a massive stage for us today with TJ in second overall on the general classification. So today will be a massive day for us, trying to get him up the hill first, either on the stage or in enough time to take the leaders jersey today. That's our biggest goal. I'm sitting in the KOM jersey, but that's forgotten about at the moment, and we'll take everything targeted on TJ trying to take the overall leaders jersey for the last stage tomorrow.
Interesting that, Paul, isn't it? Because Bogus tried every move to get into a breakaway, and now he's saying he's not really interested in defending the King of the Mountains jersey, because obviously with a rider in second place overall, it will be a huge result for the new Blanco team in a World Tour, the opening World Tour event of the season.
Look at that number 45 down there. That rider finished in third place overall in this bike race last year. That's Tiago Machado, the Portuguese rider on Team Radio Shack. He's riding alongside Andy Schleck. He said at the start of the tour, he said it was a great moment of pride for him to be able to ride alongside Andy Schleck, and he was hoping to learn a lot from the Luxembourg leader. And I have to say, Andy's done very well to try and get himself back into form for this bike race. He's had almost 6 months out of competition after he fractured his pelvis last year in the month of June in the Criterium du Dauphiné.
Yes, and he's got no fears whatsoever, Machado, when he comes to this hill. Andy Schleck, I think, is just on the road back to fitness after that crash in the Dauphiné. He's lost a lot of time in this race, but he's working as hard as he can because he's thinking long term. Number 41 there. World champion Philippe Gilbert, number 11. With the rainbow colours, he would dearly have loved to got his first victory wearing that jersey as world champion. He's got one more chance. Yeah, well, might be wrong. You may find he's got a good chance today because he loves the sort of power finish of the old Wollonga Hill.
Yeah, I think it's a good finish for him. It's very similar to the sort of finish of races like Liège, Bastogne-Liège, and of course the World Championships finished at the top of a long climb of around about 2 kilometers, and he has that explosive nature required for these short, sharp climbs, especially like the climb up Wollonga Hill. If he gets a chance, he'll have a crack at victory.
Peloton reforming now after little roadside stops, all coming together. They'll have had a word with each other, so there'll be no attacking from the bunch, and not surprisingly the result of that slowing down by the bunch. The gap has gone out to 2 minutes 19 seconds now. Once we get to 2 minutes 52, it means that Koen de Kort will be the new leader virtual of the Santos Tour Down Under. Seven riders, the rest at the moment: De Kort, Watson, Buro, Ludwig, Maczynski, Jens Muris and Thomas de Gent, all working together and all gaining time just at the moment.
Well, the gap has jumped up to around about 2 minutes and 25 seconds, as you can read down there. Two riders getting into this breakaway group from Vacansoleil, and Manuel Boaro wearing number 65. He's an Italian rider. Thomas Maczynski is in there. That's Thomas de Gent we're looking at right now, and he, for me, would be the best bet for a victory if it was to come from this group this afternoon. I would say Green Edge are very happy to have Koen de Kort in there, but de Kort, if it came down to the ascent of the climb, he's much more reputed as a sprinter rather than a mountain climber.
Yes, I'd go with de Gent, I think, if it came to running away with this race. Although when Calvin Watson took out the Jayco Herald Sun Tour a couple of weeks ago, on the last day he wasn't the leader, he took it on the very last stage. It finished on top of Arthur's Seat, which is a beautiful spot around the coastline of Port Phillip Bay, the other side of Melbourne. So it was quite a stiff uphill finish, and he won it there. And so it could be compared with the old Wollonga Hill, I guess. The old Wollonga Hill is a 3-kilometer slog right to the summit. To get one rehearsal on it, second time around is the actual finish on the top. Koen de Kort in the white on the right with most to gain. The other riders have all lost a little bit too much time. The blue shimmering waters, the backdrop to the riders as they come over this rather steep little drag, and the peloton under the escort of the riders in black, the Sky Squad of Geraint Thomas. They've got themselves organised now. They've controlled the bunch. They've got rid of all the attacks, and we have a new virtual leader on the road. 3:03 the gap. Koen de Kort has recovered his loss of 2:52. A little matter of about 2.5 hours of riding to go to keep that ochre jersey.
Yeah, I think that's just a temporary shifting of the overall lead. 46, nearly 47 minutes in the saddle. These riders, although they've got slightly different coloured jerseys, are the teammates of Geraint Thomas, the British national champion, Ian Stannard. What the guys who want to win this bike race overall have got to do now, Phil, is stay calm and try and hide in this main field, keep out of the wind. In the blue leaders jersey of the Jayco points competition, there is Andre Greipel, and he took the overall lead in that competition yesterday. This man here, Edvald Bosenhagen, Phil, number 31, I think he's going to be a serious ally to Geraint Thomas on the final ascent up the climb. Himself, a couple of years ago, as winner of 2 stages in the Tour de France, on a very successful year for Norway on that occasion. This guy is a serious talent for the future of Norwegian cycling.
He's the number 1 as far as the Norwegians are concerned. He's the pin-up boy, and he won the points competition in this event last year before he went back to Norway to train in the snows and then finally returned to the European season. He had a great year last year, and his big win was the Norwegian title. That's why he's wearing that Norwegian flag on his racing jersey.
He finished second in the World Championships last year to Philippe Gilbert at the top of the Kauberg, just outside of the small town of Valkenburg. Number 22 down there, riding behind his teammate this afternoon. That's Adam Hansen. He's the best placed Australian in the overall standings, in 9th place, and he's riding just behind Andre Greipel. I'm sure Greipel will do the honour of turning around and looking after Adam Hansen on today's stage.
Andre Greipel yesterday got his 99th win of his professional career. He turned pro back in 2005, and there's a real chance that tomorrow could be a big day for Andre. He celebrates the century if he wins in Adelaide, and highly likely he'll go out as favourite to do that tomorrow. Just taking a close-up look here at Eisel, and then followed by Bosenhagen. So all the Sky Boys doing what they had to do. They will not be surprised by this attack. They will not be surprised that their rider has become the virtual leader on the road in Koen de Kort. They can't mark everybody, but they're gambling now, and they won't allow it to get too far ahead, I don't think.
I was just thinking, Phil, if Andre Greipel does get his century of victories tomorrow, what a fitting place just outside the Adelaide Oval.
Yes, indeed. Yes, it's done big renovations at the moment, the famous cricket ground. They've even covered up Sir Don Bradman, who was outside. Average speed of 47 kilometres per hour. It's just come down slightly now as they've eased back. That's the first 36 kilometres gone under the wheels of the 151.5 today. That's Marcinski of Poland, just taking a drink from the team car, totally allowed. And this is Calvin Watson here at the back, the only Australian to make the selection in this breakaway.
Well, there you go, flag of Spain now. I would think later on, once we start to get onto the circuit around Olwalunga Hill, we will see a lot of the Spanish teams coming to the fore, especially Team Movistar. They've got a rider well up in the overall standings in 3rd place, and that's Javier Moreno. He's just looking for 6 seconds, and he's ridden very, very well since the start of this race, and he will have the support of a strong Movistar squad, especially guys like Jose Joaquim Rojas. And I'll tell you, one guy's been riding very well, Jose Ivan Gutierrez, the former time trial champion of Spain.
There he is, Koen de Kort in the white, number 164. He's only ever won 2 races in his life, and I guess he shared one of those. He won a time trial, the Grand Prix Eddy Merckx, with Dekkers at the time. His only real road race victory was the 4th stage of the Tour de l'Avenir back in 2005. But he's in the team because he's a tremendously talented workhorse on the squad, and here he now has got his own chance. Team cars come up here, have a drink, and he's going to have the old, but no, he's happy with the way it's going, just checking on anybody, doesn't want any more. And they'll be telling him that he's the virtual leader of the Tour Down Under right now, but there's still a long way to go.
Still a very long way to go, and slight problem with 2 large hills in the way before we get down to the finish line. 2 ascents of Wollonga Hill. Big crowd here in McLaren Vale to welcome the riders through. 112 kilometres to go to the finish. That should take them just around about 2.5 hours.
Starting the 2nd lap now. This is where it all started. 1 lap ago, and it's taken them 51 minutes to get around the circuit after that very, very quick start. Calvin Watson wisely just keeping an eye on things on the back seat just now. 187. The only Australian in the breakaway. That's the significant thing about this race, is the number of Australians who have not been in the breakaways. Well, they've got one in it now as they start to pull away for the moment from the main field. The McMurtry Mile in McLaren Vale is where the sea meets the vine, so treat yourself to a sensory experience. Admire local art, visit the microbrewery, or just cycle through the vineyards. Enjoy a locally made platter or taste straight from the barrel. It really is an experience you won't forget. Peloton pushed over to the right of the road by the wind, slightly cross-tail at the moment. And that breakaway just making good progress up front. Remember, they've got Koen de Kort in it, who is the virtual leader of the race now. We've gone over 3 minutes advantage as they approach 1 hour in the saddle. Sky Team doing what they have to do. They've got the race leader, they do the work.
Also quite interesting to see that Lotto Belisol are keeping themselves to the front end of the main field. Adam Hansen said this morning that he feels that the climb to the top of Wollonga is the sort of climb that could suit him a lot, and he'd like to try and maybe pull himself up to a podium position. He's only 15 seconds off the overall lead in 9th place at the start of the day.
Racing inland from the sea now as the riders head back out towards Wollonga, the township itself, which sits nestled at the base of the old Wollonga Hill. This time around they'll do a U-turn in the road and continue on this circuit. Out on a second lap just now. We do 3 full circuits here. Sprint this time around though, Paul, and a 3-second time bonus on offer. But the boys in the pack are not going to be interested now because we've got 7 riders out front.
Well, if you enjoy riding your bike on a trail, there's a magnificent cycle path here which actually links McLaren Vale to the town of Wollonga at the bottom of the climb, and it goes along an old railway track which has been removed and taken away. So it's a great place to meander through not only the vineyards but also through the olive groves.
But the conditions today, I can remember Andrea Taffi, the great Italian cyclist, now retired, when he raced here. He said it was like racing into an oven, it was so hot. He had reflected temperatures of mid-40 degrees Celsius coming off the road. There's the latest gap. It's 3 minutes and 17 seconds up now. That's the best we've seen so far.
Really is a magnificent backdrop for the McLaren Vale. Some of the most famous wines in the world come from the area we're meandering through here at the moment. And of course, this is one of the areas where they have some incredible olive groves. The olive oil that they produce in this part of South Australia are really remarkable. Over 107 kilometres still to go to the finish. That's about 2.5 hours of racing.
And 67 miles of racing. It's still quite a long way to go. You're right, 2.5 hours. Might even be slightly quicker the speed they're going today. This long straight road in the far distance, you can see 3 minutes and 17 seconds, the leading group, as they now head into Wollonga again. This has been a really good team in this race, Team Radio Shack. They have led the team race from the beginning. They're still in the hat for the win in this race. Tiago Machado could still win this race on the last climb today. He was 3rd last year overall, having finished 3rd on this very stage.
Coming through there, Luke Rowe in 2nd position, just behind Bernie Eisel, Ian Stannard, and then CJ Sutton. These guys will sacrifice themselves today. It's not about the position they're going to finish in at the top of Wollonga Hill. It's about the way that their man, Geraint Thomas, handled himself on the climb. He sounded to me, Phil, very confident when I spoke to him yesterday. He said the guys had done a great job of work for him. They kept him out of danger, kept him at the front end of the main field. They basically nursed him through yesterday's rather precarious stage on a couple of occasions. And since he took the overall lead, I don't think he's put a wheel mark wrong.
No, I don't either. It's all a question of whether he's got the strength to answer the counter moves. He's got to keep chasing all of the riders. People like Slagter 5 seconds behind, Javier Moreno 6 seconds behind, Ben Hermans 8 seconds behind. He can't afford to let any of them go from his side, and that takes a big effort if they all start countering the move. And talking of people who can win, look at this, Paul, the Euskaltel Euskadi team, and they've got 2 riders in 5th and 6th place. Both named Izagir, Gorka and Jon. Only 15 seconds. If they get their act together, they could steal this race, and we don't talk about them very often.
And bear in mind, the man just going to the left of the picture there in the orange jersey, he's a former winner of this race, so he knows exactly how to handle Willunga Hill. That's Mikael Astarosa. They are a team that I think are very, very popular in the sport of professional cycling. When any of the big races go down into the Pyrenees, the Euskaltel Euskadi, the team that represents the Basque country, all of their supporters turn out in orange T-shirts.
Right in the middle there, in that white jersey with the red band on, is Hutrovic. He's a sprinter, but he is also the champion of Belarus. Interesting little formation going on the front here now to see the men in orange. They're a very popular Basque team from northern Spain. And bringing the men up like this, we were discussing earlier when we were talking about Gorka Izagir and the Jon Izagir, both sitting just 15 seconds off the overall lead. They've got a 2-pronged possible attack as they come up the climb.
You can see them, they're taking this stage very seriously. They're all riding together. They're trying to protect those 2 leaders, the Izagirs, just looking for 15 seconds. It's going to be a massive battle once we get to Willunga. These guys won't be too concerned about how they get over Willunga Hill because Bernie Eisel, we're looking at here on the front, he's leaving all of his energy on these 3 large flat stages. You just see the Norwegian national champion in the red and blue jersey there slipping backwards. He's going back to check on Geraint Thomas to make sure that Geraint Thomas is okay and he's sheltered out of the wind.
Just gone through 1 hour of racing and the gap at 3:17. We're now into the feeding zone where they're allowed to take those drinks from the roadside and food, as they now have started their 2nd lap here. Average speed so far for the first 45 kilometers, look at that, 45.1 in the hour. Nice little crowd gathering. We can smell the sausage sizzling down there, by the way. It blows up the hill to our commentary position. They're having a good time down at the bottom. There is Geraint Thomas, number 37, just chatting with his teammates. He won't be worried yet, will he?
No, he's just trying to sit in the pack and make sure he doesn't get involved in any fracas. He doesn't want to get involved in a silly little accident that could injure him before the start of the climb. And his faithful, loyal helper on the left-hand side there is Matty Heyman, who will remain alongside him all of the time. Number 1 just moving up the outside of the main field over on the right there in the blue and green jersey of Orica Green Edge, is last year's winner of the bike race overall. And I think he's got thoughts in the back of his mind full of trying to win the race individually today, because he certainly knows how to handle the top of this climb.
Well, let's see if he gives us any clues, because we caught up with Simon Goins before the start.
I think it's going to be another great battle again this year. It's the GC's all still very close. Anyone in the top few that wins the stage, they'll take the lead. So yeah, it's going to be a great battle up at Willunga.
Yes, well, I think we knew that before the start, but we think that Simon Goins is planning to do something special. He can't win the race for a record 3rd time, simply because he's lost too much time. The average speed of the peloton, that's the big pack of riders today, 42.6 for the 43 kilometers, so a little bit slower.
But when we come to the latter part of the race, that will change around. The gap now stretching up to 3.5 minutes. You can see the difference in the average speed. These guys just cruising along nice and comfortably. But once we get into the last lap, the main field will pick their average speed up to close to 45, 46 kilometers an hour, and then they will start to eat into that advantage of 3.5 minutes.
Calm before the storm. These riders are a thinking machine, and they are thinking that the most painful part of this race still lies ahead in them there hills. The scenic 1940s themed Aldinga Airfield is home to old Adelaide's biplanes. There's a wide range of vintage planes to enjoy and experience. Fly at 1,000 feet over the vineyards and the coastal estuaries. One of which is the Star of Greece. Is a well-known and popular cafe here with locals and celebrities alike. Feast on fresh seafood and a magnificent view of not just the ocean but today of the Santos Tour Down Under. And the long line, all of a sudden, they have turned the screw. Now they're picking up the tailwind again now as they leave Wollonga on lap number 2.
Yeah, well, I just had a quick look down. I think the time gap is around about 3.5 minutes still, and they're stretched out into a very long line. In fact, there's a bit of a split halfway down the main field because of that acceleration once they picked up that tailwind. They will use the tailwind to try and pick the pace up. Over an hour and 8 minutes in the saddle so far. That's still 2 hours and 20 minutes approximately to go down towards the finish line.
Well, let's show you the story so far then. Leon Bignell, the Minister for South Australian Tourism, setting them on the way from McLaren Vale, facing up to 151.5 kilometres. Bit windy for poor old Mike Turter, but he finally got his hat on and the flag in, as the riders then opened up with a flurry of attacks which saw them consistently riding at 50 kilometres an hour, trying to establish a breakaway.
Yes, for the first 45 minutes of the race, there was attack after attack, and eventually, once all the early flurries of activity had been pulled back together, it took a long, long time before the first serious breakaway of the day started to form.
And the peloton was put under pressure by 101, Thomas de Gendt and his teammate Tomasz Maczynski of Poland. And they gradually got moving. Koen de Kort was in the breakaway, best placed overall, 2 minutes 52 seconds behind. And so all of a sudden, 7 were going clear.
But when they got to Aldinga Beach for the first time, they looked like they were going to establish the move. And then all of a sudden, it was Thomas de Gendt who decided he would try and go again over the top of the breakaway group. This small breakaway group was just about to get pulled back into the fold by the main field. And that's when Thomas de Gendt and his teammate decided they would take off.
That was the only thing to do, because the peloton were being very, very attentive. In the end, 7 riders have now got clear as we are on the second lap. And the last time check we got was 3 minutes and 34 seconds. The peloton easing right back once those 7 men established the lead. And that's the situation at this moment in time now. Just over 3.5 minutes advantage means Koen de Kort, the Dutchman in the breakaway, started the day 2:52 behind. So he's now about half a minute in the lead overall.
Might just have seen that little sign from the rider with the red jersey on the right-hand side. That was the Norwegian national champion, Bosenhagen. He was indicating that there was a problem on the road and just indicating to the riders behind. They communicate with each other like this because you wouldn't want to go blindly into some kind of obstacle. Number 75 is a big question mark, and that, of course, is the man who's in second place in the overall standings, Thomas Slachter. He is a very good climber, and we've proved to be a very good sprinter as well with that stage victory that he got around Stirling. Although I do think he got a bit of a surprise jump on some of the big names like Matty Goss and the world champion Philippe Gilbert on that occasion. But being in this position now, he's obviously got to be nurturing belief that he can win this bike race overall. But to do that, he's going to have to finish in front of Geraint Thomas and probably take the first place.
Riding just up the side there of the champion of South Africa, Robbie Hunter. Hunter won't be thinking of the climb today. He's a sprinter, and he's probably thinking of trying to defend his title, which will be next month in South Africa. There he is, number 55, with his flag of South Africa on his jersey. Quite a number of riders representing their national champion of their countries here in this race this year.
A lot of movement now. Everyone's staying nice and calm. Riders like Geraint Thomas have a teammate alongside them all of the time, just in case they have a slight mechanical problem, to get them back into the race as quickly as possible. You have to try and learn to conserve energy. I still think, Phil, that Team Radio Shack are going to be dangerous, and also this team here, the team with the dark blue jerseys of Movistar, and the rider there just wearing number 96, Javier Moreno. He's well up there in the overall standings. He's only looking for 6 seconds, and he's got a host of really talented, experienced bike riders on his squad with him.
Well, there's 4 teams I think could be in on the act of the kill here to knock Sky off the top. Movistar, Radio Shack, Euskadel and Blanco, all looking for the win when it comes down to those 2 crucial climbs of the old Wollonga Hill. The parched countryside here, except where the vines grow, because they water those. This is South Australia, and these are the riders now A line astern, approximately 3:34 behind the lead group. 75 minutes they've now been riding the race. They've had a very high average speed. They've got 7 riders ahead of them, and they're keeping it under control. And all of the work, as always, being done by the team of Geraint Thomas, Team Sky.
Pretty much of it, all of the work being done by one man on that team, and that's the Austrian rider Bernie Eisel. One of his teammates, though, Phil, coming up here to give him a bit of a hand. 43.5 kilometres an hour so far since the start of the race.
54 kilometres already passed up under those wheels, and this is the leader, the man with the most to gain right now, 164 Koen de Kort, the Dutchman on the Argus Shimano team. These leaders have cracked an average speed of 45.1 just now, so they're more than holding their own. Thomas Gent, he's a rider in this breakaway, could be a real candidate for the win. He's lost his time, unfortunately, to win the race overall, but he climbs well indeed. Number 14 is Klaas Lodewijk, Belgian rider on Team BMC. That, by the way, is the same team as Cadel Evans, the Aussie winner of the Tour de France a couple of years ago. Not riding, Cadel, when he was world champion, did ride this event, and he has won a stage of this event down in Tanunda, but it's a little bit too early for Cadel's training plans. He likes to have a slower start to the year, so he gets his form for the Tour de France.
It's very difficult in this day and age in the sport of professional cycling, Phil, to be competitive from February, January, right the way up until November. You've got to pick your peaks and troughs. A lot of the riders we're looking at here are riders who will be looking to be in form for the one-day classics like Paris-Roubaix, the Tour of Flanders, or Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which comes in the month of April. Then they'll take a little bit of a breather through May before starting to build back up for the Tour de France. Many of the Tour de France contenders, they like to start their season a lot more gently and then start to build up from April, May and June and then into July to have that one big peak of the year in the month of July at the Tour. Although having said that, I have to say TJ Van Garderen, the teammate of Cadel Evans, is already racing in San Luis stage race in Argentina, and he's actually currently lying in 2nd place overall, but I think that's a question of a lot of youthful experience.
Back on Soleil, top Dutch team. Thomas Gent is a Belgian rider on the team, setting the pace there. Most aggressive rider in the Tour de France last year. Stage winner on the Stelvio last year, and the Giro d'Italia had a great season.
He's just about the right age as well to start to develop, because he's just 26 years of age. He turned 26 towards the end of last year, and I think everybody was very, very surprised, including himself. He thought about the possibility, Phil, at the start of the Giro of maybe finishing inside of the top 20. I don't think to begin with he really dreamed about getting onto the podium, and of course winning that magical stage up to the Stelvio, which is one of the iconic climbs of the Giro.
Very, very few Belgians succeed in the Giro d'Italia.
I remember actually just before the start of the race, I met him in the elevator at the hotel, and I said to him, so was there any snow at the top of the Stelvio? He said, oh, only about 2 meters. It climbs up to 2,600 meters in altitude, the Stelvio in Italy.
It's not going to find any snow here in this most beautiful part of South Australia. We're in the McLaren Vale today, as the riders go round in circles. They're on lap 2. There is a time bonus sprint for the Jayco points competition at Snapper Point when we get down to Aldinga Beach. A little bit away, but in all honesty, it doesn't really mean a lot to these riders here, and they're taking away the seconds, which could affect the overall lead. So Geraint Thomas is very happy they are in the front too. Adam Hansen, best placed Australian in the race, and he rides for the Belgian Lotto Belisol team. His folks are down from Queensland as well, and Adam, he's the quiet man of Australian cycling. He just doesn't have a lot to say, except when you put him on a bike and the legs start talking. He's in a position, Paul, he's 15 seconds in that little bunch of riders, but I don't think Adam will climb the hill well enough to move up too far.
Well, the team will help him because he's the best placed Australian. He'd like to, if he could, crack inside of the top 5. And one thing that did put me off a fraction was he said he'd be all right on the climb if it was a headwind. And the reason for that is what a headwind does on a climb like this is it deadens the speed of the pure climbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a pure climber just over there on the left-hand side, number 41, Andy Schleck, winner of the Tour de France back in 2010. He's come here to get himself back into competition, to get as much competition into his legs as he can leading up to this year's Tour de France. He had a very, very nasty accident last year. He fractured his pelvis in a silly little crash. In fact, he was blown off his bike in an individual time trial, and at the time he didn't think it was so bad, but when they looked at it, he was seriously injured.
Just looking down at number 41 there, Andy Schleck, talking with Stuart O'Grady, two great ambassadors for this race. First time in Australia for Andy Schleck, and before the race started, he told us about what he hoped to do.
Personally, I have not like big ambitions to win here. I have big ambitions later in the seasons, of course, but now I just hope to be a good teammate and help the guys out as much as I can, and then finish a good race. I believe if it's really gonna be hard in the climb, 10 guys, maybe I won't be in the front with 10 guys, but maybe if there's 20 guys, I'll still be in the front, and then if I'm there, there's still 3-4 teammates of me who come here with ambitions to win, who will be there, and then I won't save myself. Probably will see me pull for the other guys in the front.
Well, we'll see what happens today on the climb. If there's 10 guys, he won't be there. If there's 20, he will be there. He's fighting back from a terrible crash he had, broke his pelvis in the time trial stage of all things in the Dauphiné, which is the warm-up race to the Tour de France last year. And although he did ride in the Tour of Beijing, which was the last World Tour event of the year in October in China, he really had no form, and he's had to search, and he says he's worked very hard all winter to get the legs for this year's Tour de France. So this race is going to help him whatever happens.
Yes, I spoke to Stuart O'Grady about the ethics, the training ethics of Andy Schleck, and Stuart said, well, if you go out for a 6-hour bike ride with Andy Schleck, you know about it when you come back, because all you can do is just collapse into the couch. But he's also right in the fact that he's here to help some of the younger guys, because they've got 4th place Ben Hermans. They've got a little bit further down, they've got 8th place Thiago Machado, who finished 3rd overall in this race last year, and 10th place George Bennett, who really was the one who set their race in motion when we went up Corkscrew Hill a couple of days ago.
And they lead the team race, so they've a lot to take away from this race if they don't lose it all today. They're not looking like losing it all today as we go down onto Aldinga Beach again, heading for Snapper Point now, the far end of the beach road, and that's where we will have the first of the Jayco sprints. It'll be interesting to see if Koen de Kort, he is a sprinter, goes for this, because there is a 3-second time bonus. At the moment he's the virtual leader of the Tour, but at this stage of the race he won't be thinking of leading the Tour by the end of the day. Calvin Watson, 20 years of age, one of the Aussie great talents coming through on the front.
Well, just a little bit of a kick going through there. They're starting to line themselves up. I think it's more a question of pride once they come up to the sprint point here at Snapper Point. 3.3 seconds available for the first rider to cross the line. As you said, not really that important for most of these guys. They're so far down in the overall standings. Put a bit of pride and an extra few Australian dollars to put into the back pockets. Not too bad.
And the waters look absolutely delightful today here on Australia Day. National holiday, of course, and will be enacted on Monday as well, but this is the beach road here, and as the weather warms up, it's not going to be a scorcher today. It's only going to go up to around 24 degrees Celsius, which is about 74 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's very pleasant for bike racing. Now the board is out, a kilometre to the sprint at Snapper Point. A little bit interesting here to see who actually goes for it.
Well, just watching the body language there of Thomas de Gent. And he may well be the one to try and make a move there. The Jayco sprint will be after just 63.5 kilometres covered, right here on the Esplanade in Snapper Point, where there is a huge crowd turning out. And I'm sure there's a lot of barbecue fires being put up there as well, because it's a bit mean, the commentary position we've got today, Phil, smelling all the wonderful sausages coming up.
All the sizzles are blowing right through our commentary box here, just outside. There's Thomas de Gent following the wheel of Koen de Kort. It's not too far now, a couple of 100 metres, 400 metres to the line. They may just work and not even bother to contest it because there's really not a lot of point for 3 seconds when you're 2 minutes 52 behind. Jens Muris at the back here. He is the big Dutchman who came over early, and somebody stole his backpack. on New Year's Eve, which included his passport and his very famous cycling shoes, which are tailor-made for his feet, and he never saw them again. So there's the line. Nobody's really interested as Thomas Kent goes through. I think it was, yes it was, and followed there through by Manuela Boro in second place.
Well, he was quite crafty there, Thomas Kent. He engineered himself into the right place at the right time to go across the line in first place to, in fact, to get himself the maximum points there. Having a quick chat with his teammate. Well, once they get away from the esplanade here at Snapper Point, they'll turn to the right and they'll pick up the tailwind, which is blowing off the ocean here this afternoon.
Looking quite sharp. They're pushing the pace again, picking up a nice wind down the Aldinga Beach. Doing what we all refer to in the trade as through and off, or bit and bit. It's each man does his little bit of pacemaking, the others take shelter behind and then do their quick turn, and then they drop behind. So they're all friends at the moment. 5 teams, 6 teams represented in the 7 riders. Calvin Watson coming through, big day for Calvin. Had to ride really hard just to get selection for the university team here. Meanwhile, back in the bunch, familiar scenes as we see Bernie Eisel on the front, and a little bit surprised, but there he is. In second place now is Andre Greipel, but there's no points for that blue jersey he's wearing because 7 riders are in the clear up front.
Well, I just feel, Phil, that today Lotto Belisol, there's a lot of riders from Lotto Belisol at the front end of that pack. I feel they're going to do the job for their man Adam Hansen. He does such a lot of work for guys like Andre Greipel during races like the Tour de France, completely self-sacrifices himself for the team, that they're probably just trying to inspire him to do something special today. They know how important it is for an Australian in the Santos Tour Down Under.
Well, Adam was in the split on the Corkscrew Hill, which was the steepest climb we've had thus far this week. And he was in the 11 group of riders. There he is there in the group of 11 riders that came right onto the wheel of the 4 breakaways, literally on the finishing line, where Geraint Thomas was the winner. And so that's why he's right close. And he may have taken confidence by the fact that he got to the leaders as they crossed the line. It looks as though Bernie Eisel here, who can speak German, of course, he's Austrian, having a little smile at Andre Greipel. It's Sky and Lotto. There is the beauty of the Aldinga Beach in the background. 86 kilometers to go. We're going to see it once more before we head out on to the climb of the Owoolonga Hill on Australia Day. Just an hour from the Adelaide Central Business District, the Fleurieu Peninsula is an easy getaway, and it combines adventure with culture. The area will keep the surfers happy, while there are plenty of other activities for the whole family. You can take a thrilling boat ride, experience Granite Island, or just watch the dolphins.
Well, the surf's starting to get up around Snapper Point at Aldinga Beach at the moment, as everybody is enjoying their day on Australia Day. Tide starting to come in, and the peloton starting to think when is the moment they need to turn up the screws a fraction to start to eat into that advantage, which has just crept up to around about the 4-minute mark now. There's another rider scuttling up the outside. Bernie. I think he's got the horses under control there, Phil.
Yes, Eisel calling up a teammate, Matty Heyman it is, who comes up alongside him. Boysenhagen, but look at the gap, Paul. We are out to 4 minutes and 12 seconds. They don't seem very concerned. Now, when we do eventually get up the Owoolonga Hill, we've got about 22 kilometers to go. That's all on the final circuit. So they'll want to be a lot closer than this by then. This is, they've been going for just over 90 minutes now, 1:33. That's a good gap.
It is a very good gap, but bear in mind when you're in a breakaway like the breakaway group that we've got of 7 riders, when they hit Wollonga Hill, it's completely different to chasing a group on the flat. We've got 82 kilometers before we get to the finish. I normally have my favorite little recipe that I like to tell you about, that when you want to chase a breakaway down, you can pull back a minute for every 10 kilometers. Well, on a climb, it's completely different. You can pull back a minute very easily in 3 kilometers going uphill.
That's right. The power of these riders. There's the man in the hot seat. He's now got a comfortable lead in the Santos Tour Down Under, Koen de Kort. And as you can see, he's been literally down under a couple of times during this race. He was involved in the big crash on the descent of the Corkscrew on the second day of this race. Oh, that's Jens Murray. Sorry, it was Jens who's
we're just looking at Jens. He's actually got himself tattooed up for the day with Australia written down his forearms, obviously celebrating the national holiday.
He's been here for quite a while. He's been here throughout the month of January. Came towards New Year's Eve from Holland. Yes, he's a very patriotic man, isn't he? Considering he's not an Australian.
But he's on an Australian team at Orica Greenedge. And obviously he could only do one arm because the other one's pretty much cut up.
Oh, looking at each other here, but they're keeping the pressure on. They know they've got just over 4 minutes now. 50 miles left to race, 81 kilometres. Peloton will have to chase. They'll have to start the chase on the next lap. There must be a reversal once they start the third and final circuit around Aldinga Beach. Still ISIL setting the pace, and interestingly the riders nipping in out there, that was the Blanco team members, because they've got Thomas Slachter and they want to keep him up near the ochre jersey rather of Geraint Thomas. A little bit distracted there by the pain. You can see the pain on Graham Brown's face here. He was the one involved in that horrible crash at the finish yesterday. Both his arms are heavily bandaged. Initially they thought he may have broken his wrist, but although he's quite badly bandaged, apparently he's all okay. Well, he seems all okay. He's in pain.
Yeah, well, he certainly is, and he will recover from that. In fact, last night he was visited by one of the former chiropractors, from the Australian Institute for Sport, and she put him back together again and realigned his back. And it's good to see that he didn't have any fractures, because Brownie was showing some serious form yesterday on the run, and he was pipping Geraint Thomas to all the intermediate sprint points. And so hopefully most of those injuries are pretty much superficial, and he'll hold on to that form that he was showing yesterday.
Just riding in front of fellow Australian Graham's from Perth, but just behind him is fellow Australian Jack Bobridge, who is very much from South Australia, from Galway in fact. And Jack is wearing the Skoda King of the Mountains jersey, so slightly different colours there from his team strip. Well, everybody insists on going across that roundabout at the back of the field. This is where we are just now. We've been over 2 times. We're heading out to start our last circuit before we head out straight up the hill.
Yes, that little point there where the F is the feeding station, that's in the heart of Wollonga. That's the gap between the leaders and the main field. It's gone up now to 4 minutes and 21 seconds. And I'm rather astounded, Phil, because every time we look at the main field, they look as if they're riding fairly fast. But I think they've still currently got it pretty much in control. And the group here, as they start to move away towards McLaren, this is the lumpy little crossroads to get across to McLaren Vale. They were only doing about 35 kilometers an hour there as they just sneaked over the motorbike pilot's shoulders. You could see the speedo.
Well, with the little mustachioed figure we just saw then is the moto pilot. He's a very famous person when it comes to international cycle racing. He is French, and he's come all the way from the south of France to be here as a motorcycle pilot. A little bit of a slowing in the last 10 kilometres, 43.8 kilometres an hour. His name, by the way, is Patrice Diavolo, and he's done many Tours de France. It's a very, very specialised thing, Paul, operating a camera on a motorbike amongst these guys, often at speeds of 100 kilometres an hour and often in adverse weather conditions. And the riders want to know who's doing the driving of the motorbikes, because they know who to trust and who they don't want near them.
Well, first of all, the motorbike driver and the cameraman have to have a very good relationship. They have to understand each other, because, I mean, I don't know how they do it sometimes, going down mountains in the rain at 100 kilometers an hour and keeping the just basically keeping the camera on the picture all of the time. It really is remarkable.
It is, and all our cameramen, I have to say, have been producing some terrific images here on this Santos Tour Down Under. as clear as the best we've seen anywhere in the world. It's all part of the World Tour, I think, but the boys do a great job. Mind you, they've got the weather. They can't complain, can they?
No, they can't complain at all, but it's always good to see South Australia in wonderful HD. The average speed of the peloton over the last 10Ks, just a tad slower than the leaders at 42.1 kilometers an hour. I think we're getting to the point now where that breakaway advantage is about to stabilize.
Well, Bernie Eisel seems to be conducting affairs from the front of the peloton today. He's having a chat with anybody who comes up, and they all go back. Nobody helping him on the chase, but he's keeping a good tempo all by himself, remember. They're only eking out the seconds just now. We've squeezed out to 4:21 inside 80 kilometers from the finish. Everybody just waiting. They're all ready to go. They're just waiting.
Yes, but the pressure will come on later.
So as we look down on the peloton, 4:21 the gap. Something has got to give pretty soon as the riders take on more drinks in today's stage of the Santos Tour Down Under. The long blue line at the front now, well, blue and black, I suspect, as Bernie Eisel sets the pace and continues to keep up the tempo. Right behind him is Graham Brown, swathed in bandages after he bounced off the road 700 metres from the finish in Tanunda yesterday. The Australian team flags are flying high because today is Australia Day here in South Australia, and they're hoping for a home winner. I wonder if they'll get it. At the moment, they're outnumbered in the breakaway, 6-1. The only Australian is the youngest man in the race, 20-year-old Calvin Watson in the white jersey up there.
Yeah, he's just moving to the front. He must be quite excited about being in a situation like this, and I wouldn't want the professionals to give him a couple of minutes advantage to get to Wollonga Hill, because this young man at even only 20 years of age is a serious talent for the future of Australian cycling. 4 minutes and 19 seconds
but
is
that's
a very
reversal.
big gap.
That's a 2-second reversal. Maybe that is the word. And now we've gone from 4:21 to 4:19. The first time we've seen a reversal. Heading up to an hour and 3/4 in the saddle. So approximately half distance for the race at the moment. Plenty of time to bring them back.
It will start, I think, once we go through Wollonga next time and start to head down towards the beach. You'll start to see a little bit of an acceleration, and then when we come into McLaren Vale for the last time, you will see the main field there really boring down full speed to try and pull back this breakaway before the start of the climb.
Just to give you all the names again, if you're just joining us, Koen de Kort is the rider who is the leader virtual on the road. He started the day 2:52 behind. He's now 4:18 in front. Then you've got two riders on the Vacances Soleil team, Thomas de Gent and Tomasz Marzinski, the Polish member of that team. Jens Morris is here for Orica Green Edge. He's the big one on the right there. Klaus Lodewijk is the rider in red, sat at the back for Team BMC. Calvin Watson in the white jersey up front left at the moment. He's the youngster riding for UniSA. And Michele Boro, number 65, he is the rider who is riding for the Saxo Tinkoff team from Denmark.
Dutch flag over to the right-hand side. That we've seen so many flags. Obviously today, the multitude of flags have to be Australian flags because it is Australia Day down here in South Australia. But there have been Spanish flags, French flags, Dutch flags just to the side of the road there, all coming out to support these riders from all over the world. There's the overall leader in the ochre jersey. Geraint Thomas looking very, very comfortable for the moment.
Yes, Geraint Thomas has got no problems at all just at the moment. He looks very, very calm and relaxed. He expected this sort of race pattern, working out according to plan just now. There's still got to be a chase back. You can't close 4 minutes plus without a very solid chase. And I think next lap around is when they've got to start doing it.
Well, I would tend to agree with you. Once I think they've gone through Wollonga and they start to head back down towards the beach, it'll all start on the approach to Aldinga Beach, and that's where we'll start to see maybe some of the other teams coming forward and taking a bit of interest, because Team Sky don't want to do all of the pacemaking at this point. They want some of the other teams to quite possibly come forward and assist them.
I think the chase just began, Paul. They suddenly sent a rider up to lift the pace from Team Radio Shack, and that is the team which we feel is the biggest danger in this race. They lead in the team race, but they've got big cards to play, and they've decided they've got to bring this gap down to be much more manageable. They're going even before we predicted.
Yeah, well, I tell you, the Radio Shack riders with 3 men inside of the top 10 and 2 very young riders in George Bennett and Ben Hermans, joined by the experienced Portuguese rider Tiago Machado. He was a rider who knows exactly how to attack on Wollonga Hill. He used Wollonga Hill last year to move himself up to 3rd place in the overall standings.
Using Laurent Didier from Luxembourg to be the first man to start the pace. It's up to him to keep this pace up as long as he can. Nobody's going to help him. Bernie Ice will be saying thanks very much, you're doing my job for me there, as he passes through Graham Brown. He'll be happy enough. And just behind Graham Brown is Jack Bobridge there. He's also there. Then we've got the Saxo Tinkoff boys, Chris Anker Sorensen, who also will climb very, very well. I've completely forgotten about him for the hill, Paul. He may not be able to win the race, but he could well do a good ride on the old Wollonga Hill.
Most certainly you can see a little bit of a change in the speed there as we go inside of 73 kilometers now to go down towards the finishing line. They are now starting to take this race a little bit more seriously.
Well, Didier, he's been left, and Graham Brown taking a bottle. I don't want it. Do you want it, Jack? No, I don't want it. Oh, well, I'll have it then. I'll give you an empty one back.
In fact, Didier riding on the front here, his father was Lucien Didier, who used to be a teammate of Bernard Hinault when Bernard Hinault went on to win the Tour de France on 5 occasions. And at the time, he was the only rider really getting onto the international circuit from Luxembourg. But since the arrival of the Schlecks over the last couple of seasons, they really have started to develop 1 or 2 good riders out of the small duchy.
Well, he turned pro back in 2006. His only race he's ever won was the Luxembourg Road Race Championship, which he did last year, 2012. But no other title for him has come his way.
No, but he's got the experience of Dad Lucien to feed on as we now get back into McLaren Rail. This rider's got his hand up. He's looking for some drinks to take on board. It is, I would say, ideal racing conditions here this afternoon, Phil, because we're only looking at around about 24 degrees at Celsius. It's gone back up again. Almost 4 minutes and 40 seconds.
That's a new best, 4:39. That's interesting because it looked as though the chase had started with Didier coming to the front, but he's gone now. So we look here at Manuela Burro on the front of the escape group. This is Lodvik asking his team car. That's the neutral service car there, who have actually given him a drink.
Interesting thing about the rider from Luxembourg, Phil, his father and his grandfather both won stages in the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia.
Well, looking down there at 121, Matthew Lloyd, he is a great climber, but as you can see, he's been bouncing on the road this week. He is heavily bandaged, and he also has his back skinned by the crash. Well, we spoke to him before the start today.
Normally it'll depend on the first lap of the climb to see who's feeling good, see if the field sort of splits apart. You know, recently we've seen the course beforehand, the laps beforehand, place a lot of pressure on the teams purely because of the wind. But today and the last few days there hasn't been that much wind, so you know people can save their energy. So it means that the final will be very, very explosive. Which is good for the crowd. Don't really know whether it's that good for me because I'm just buckled, but I mean, generally speaking, it's always going to be exciting.
It is, and he's an absolutely wonderful climber, Matthew Lloyd. He once had a terrible crash descending the old Wollonga Hills a few years ago now, but he blacked out on the way down because of the sunstroke which hit him on the occasion. No such problems today. It is a pleasant day in South Australia, and there's no sunstroke due for anybody. The race now has got to concentrate on the 7 men ahead. All change at the front of the peloton now as we watch here František Rabon from the Czech Republic, but he's on the Belgian Omega Pharma Quick-Step team, and just behind him Martin Jangli, Dutchman Blanco. The Sky have gone back into the ranks while they've let the other teams pick up the pace.
Well, Rabon, 3 times a national time trial champion of the Czech Republic between 2008 and 2010. And it is rather interesting now to see a number of teams coming forward. They've decided, they've understood the tactic of Team Sky. Team Sky were just riding to leave that gap and allow it to be pegged at a certain amount. And if you want to come and win this bike race, well, you better come forward and do some pacemaking yourself. And that's exactly what's happening.
Looking at Martin Jangli now, who's taken it up here. That's opening lap 1. This is what they did on the first full circuit of Aldinga Beach, 43.5. I think we can show you what they did on lap 2. They slowed down considerably the second lap, 40.7. But the first lap was madness in the peloton as they tried to establish the leading group.
See all the colours of the jerseys now starting to group together. Now, this is a new addition here. This is a nice little VIP area sponsored by UniSA.
Yes, I think that's the UniSA podium there. And just behind them, I think they can all rush off and have a little meal in the wineries afterwards. Great vantage point. So this is, let's have a look at the leaders. This is interesting. That first lap again for the leaders now as they were pulling away, 46.3 kilometres an hour. And they will have kept up quite a respectable second lap, 41.7, quicker than the peloton.
Well, you see the first lap was very, very rapid in the main field with lots of attacks and flurries of activity. But then once these guys started to get themselves organised, they've got stuck in at 41.5 kilometres an hour. The gap has now started to tumble a fraction to 4 minutes and 26 seconds. And I think we'll start to see that's going to be the general trend now, especially after almost 2 hours in the saddle.
Just trying to hear what the Belgian rider class was saying, but I couldn't catch it.
I think he said
13 seconds.
I think he said, Phil, why can't you come and film here in the middle?
Come and join us. Yeah. Come and shelter us from the wind. That would be lovely. Yes, well, we'll see if that's the start of the reverse now, but it's certainly a change of tactic in the peloton because we've seen a number of teams now put the riders on the front, not least Martin Jelingi of Holland. He turned pro back in 2003. He hasn't actually won a race since 2006, but he did finish third in that great classic race, Paris-Roubaix, just over a year ago, 2011.
What happens when you get into a breakaway like this, you've got the excitement of getting into the breakaway in the first part of the race, but when you have to settle down to start breaking your back to keep the tempo going, the average speed slowly starts to wear down, especially after 5 days of racing. 5 days in this bike race tends to eat into your reserves, and then all of a sudden the main field knows how to accelerate. We're looking here at Didier from Luxembourg. He's come back to the front. There's a lot of riders now starting to think about their hopes of winning the Santos Tour Down Under this year. And as I said a little earlier, there's 20 riders within 30 seconds of the overall lead.
Didier doing a really fast turn here and happy to take over from Franciszek Rabon of the Czech Republic. Jelingi's dropped into third place. Everybody watching. Sky are relieved that somebody else has come up and started to chase down, because I don't really think Sky were interested in catching that leading group. Happy to let the small time bonuses go up the road and take on man on the climb, and that was probably their plan. So the others have realized they were not going to chase them down, so they've had to put the teams up here.
And bear in mind that if a breakaway goes clear for Team Sky, that's a great situation, because then there are no more time bonuses left.
Exactly.
And if somebody like Machado goes out and wins the stage and gets the time bonuses at the top, that makes it a lot more complicated for Geraint Thomas to control. So yes, you're probably right that the tactic of Team Sky was leave that breakaway clear off the front end of the main field, because all of the time bonuses have gone.
Yep, and just make sure it doesn't win by 2 minutes and 50 seconds, because then that would have given it to Koen de Kort. But in all fairness, no respect to Koen, he's a very, very good cyclist, but he will not like the climb on the old Wollonga Hill at all. Pushing up the far right there, Ian Stannard in the white jersey. He's got the Lamprey team lining up behind him with Matthew Lloyd there, hope on the climbs. And those boys in orange, are they the big danger men of the day? Because they have ridden as a team all day today, and now they're creeping to the front to see why the pace has gone up, because they carry 2 riders sitting in the high places overall. There's a very good chance that they could deliver the blow. They've got Gorka Izaguirre and Jon Izaguirre in 5th and 6th places, both of them 15 seconds behind the lead.
Well, as the leading group now comes into the main street in Wollonga, next time they come into the main street, Phil, they won't turn around, and they're going here through the Powerade hydration station And that's extremely important at times like this in the bike race. Next time round, it'll be straight on and straight up the hill for the first time.
Last visit was to go round the bollards and onwards to Aldinga Beach again. Calvin Watson riding like a real veteran there. As he unpacks his bag, he's not overawed at all by the quality of riders, Tour de France men alongside him. Super crowd building up in the street here. There's the hill in the distance, but we won't be going up there till the next lap. Then a little bit of road restructuring for the hard-working men that set up the course, and believe me, they start in the early hours of the morning to get these roads safe for the race, and they've got to run out and alter the line of the course as soon as the last man is on the last lap.
There's a bit of power disappearing from this group now, a little bit more reticent to go to the front. You see Thomas De Kent, he just accelerated slightly as they went through Wollonga High Street there, and he's left these guys behind. That's an indication fatigue is starting to creep in.
He sensed him. He's a real candidate to win the stage. He won't have any fears with the hill up front, but that was his move, to get into the breakaway and hope that he could win the race, because he's probably the best on the hills of this leading group.
Well, when you finish in third place overall in the Giro d'Italia and you win a stage over the Stelvio Pass, well, then that's an indicator that you are a top man, and they're having a hard time actually just staying in contact with him here. That's an indicator to me now, Phil, that in this last hour and a half of the race, that gap that we saw get as high as 4 minutes and 40 seconds is actually going to turn around.
Well, they're coming through to the same Powerade feeding station at the moment. The Belgian flag flying there on the right. Well, they've got a Belgian in that leading group today. But these riders are showing much more urgency now. Those men in orange off to the right of our picture, I would be very concerned. I'm quite sure Sky will have noticed that. So 64 kilometers done. We'll just check out how the day has gone for everybody. We've got 7 riders racing now away from Wollonga. The gun was fired by the new Minister of Tourism, Sport and Recreation, Leon Bignall. Mike Turter wrestled with his hat and gets them all away, and they were off. And a terrific start.
Crazy start. Everybody throwing caution to the wind on this penultimate stage of the Santos Tour Down Under, and small groups forming one after the other. But everyone that got clear over the first 30 or 40 minutes of the race eventually got pulled back by the main peloton, who did not want a large group of riders getting clear.
He did. Thomas De Gent was on the attack a lot with 101 on his back, but every time it looked as though that was the combination, it all changed.
But the main field, as you can see at that point, were not going to let anybody get clear. I have to say, Thomas De Gent was very alert and very aggressive, but once they came down to snap a point for the first time, it looked as if a large breakaway was about to form, but no, the main field were having nothing, and they pulled it back together one more time.
Hard riding Sky team, keeping it all together, didn't like the combination of it. And then eventually the move was made when 7 riders got themselves together, but the peloton then decided, well, that was a good combination, so they started to slow down. Thomas De Gent to winning the sprint, the Jayco sprint at Snapper Point. It gave him a few bob and 3 seconds in time bonus. The peloton already falling back to more than 4 minutes. And these are the riders here now establishing it. We've got one more visit to the Jayco sprint points at Snapper Point at 103 kilometers. Now the riders back in Wollonga, they're queuing up. The gap is still there. It's coming down though, but only by a few seconds as they go through the Powerade hydration station. This is their final circuit before they tackle the first climb of the old Wollonga Hill. Claren Vale, some of the most famous wineries in the world, right here in South Australia, and the race behind now has suddenly sprung alive. These are the leaders, 7 of them still out in front, but the main field now has really started to chase. And look at that, 53 kilometers an hour for the leaders, and we believe that the chase is now going even quicker.
Well, they are picking up a slight tailwind, but they've got to keep the pressure on this leading group of 7 riders, because they know with the chase coming on behind by about half a dozen teams, it's not Team Sky anymore, because the tactics of Team Sky, I think, were to let this breakaway have the chance of taking the first 3 places, because that took away all of the time bonuses. So therefore, what we're seeing now is 4 or 5 teams really whipping up the pace in the main field behind. And I wouldn't be surprised with this tailwind, Phil, if we'd see speeds approaching 55 kilometres an hour from the bunch.
Yeah, I would quite agree. Thomas Kent calling up his team car there from Baton Soleil. There's 2 of them in the breakaway. Just wanted a drink, I think, no problems. Here's we're looking at the main field now. That's again Martin Jangli on the front driving. František Rabon is here for the Quick Step team, and it's Saxo Tinkoff in those dark jerseys with the yellow bands. They're also putting their team in front. And interestingly, Paul, Garmin Sharp in those light blue jerseys have come to the front now.
Well, they're thinking about their youngster Jack Bauer, because he's well up in the overall standings. He starts the day in 7th place. He's in that group of riders just 15 seconds off the overall lead. There is the shadow of the main field now. Look at that gap there, 2 minutes and 44 seconds.
That's incredible. They've got them in the sight on this long straight road. They've halved it just with that one chase and one reaction. Now they want them back before they get on the hill, by the look of it. That's how we bring you our pictures. Great shots from the helicopter there with the camera underneath it.
Amazing thing with these helicopter cameras nowadays, it's almost like having a camera on a tripod in the sky. And it gives us the great views of South Australia, which can be beamed around the world and entice people to come and visit this part of the world, to go to the beaches, to go out to the vineyards. Yesterday around the Barossa Valley was absolutely remarkable.
It was. Even ride your bike, because there's plenty of nice safe roads in this area for a nice pedal. Now a left-hand turn, so there'll be a wind change. Might hurt a little bit more.
They will get a shock next time they get the time check from the board, which is on the back of a motorbike, and they see from 440 it's all of a sudden gone down to 240. Went down very, very quickly. Once the main field had decided that was the moment to move, they really did lift up the pace, and that does in fact, Phil, let's not forget, mean that the overall lead that was for a moment on the shoulders of Koen de Kort, well, that's been unceremoniously ripped off his back.
It looks like it. He's no longer the virtual leader of the race. He was 2:52 behind. The last check we got was 2:44. And they're coming. They will have seen him on this long straight as well, because it was a long road. But again, the peloton looks to have concertinaed and closed down a little bit. They have turned. It's the wind which is causing the problem once again here.
You know, you can see 1 or 2 riders in the convoy of cars at the back. This, for them, as far as they're concerned, is the lull before the storm. They've all gone back to take on board drinks from their team cars to take back to their teammates in the main field. Now, you're allowed to do that after 50 kilometres of the race has been covered, up until 20 kilometres to go to the finish. But they all know that they've got to do it now, because there's no chance of going back to the team cars once we hit Wollonga Hill for the first time, because this race will literally explode.
It will. You can't pass drinks up when they're on the climb. Anyway, that's Luke Durbridge down there, who's taking a few bottles on board, is he? Yes, for the team, back in the pack. That's the professional foul that you see, hanging on to the bottle when really you're getting a free tow. But the referees will keep a close eye on that. That's not going to be a penalty award today.
That's
57k.
That's known as the elastic bottle. And he just used that to get a little bit of a help and a push to get himself back into the main field. He's probably carrying about 6 bottles inside his jersey and inside his back pocket there to go and distribute to the rest of the team.
Well, as they continue on here, let's have a look at how the average speed is going in the last 5 kilometres. It's been 49 kilometres an hour by the leaders. So they're hardly slowing down. They were picking up that tailwind then.
Well, they certainly were. That's pretty impressive, and it is in that tailwind section that they've picked that pace up to almost 50 kilometres an hour. And they realise that once they turn back into the headwind, that's where they're going to start to lose big chunks of time once again.
And to see the world champion down there in the white jersey, the speed for the peloton. Take a look at that, Paul. It's gone through 56 kilometres an hour at the same distance, and that's why they've halved the lead of those 7 men.
Dropping back to the team car there with the white jersey with the rainbow bands around the middle. That's Philippe Gilbert, the world champion, on the attack yesterday. I think maybe just to blow the cobwebs out of his legs a little bit, give himself a good hard workover, and maybe try and set himself up for something this afternoon. If they catch that 7-man leading group, this is an ideal finish for the world champion, who's still got to get a victory in the rainbow bands. In fact, he crashed out of the Tour of Lombardy towards the end of last year.
So the world champion has been back, been loaded up with fuel. The gap is coming down. It looks like this is all living up to its reputation. It will soon be a battle of the old Wollonga Hill. Kangaroo Island is the third biggest island in Australia and just a 45-minute ferry ride from Cape Jervis on the Fleurieu Peninsula. The wildlife on Kangaroo Island is abundant, and you're likely to come across plenty of playful seals, koalas and many other native animals. Escape everyday life and get back to basics on the island, where you can recharge and rejuvenate. And I think we can now show you right across away is Kangaroo Island, and I've been there, Paul. It is a fabulous place to go. You feel as though you really are in a very remote part of the world.
Great day of racing. Partly cloudy this afternoon, 24 degrees Celsius, with slight winds from a south-southwesterly direction of 20 kilometers an hour. It's those winds that have been making it rather difficult for the leading group of 7 riders as they charge now back down towards Snapper Point for the final time.
Yes, we're waiting for another time check now, because these boys are still one cohesive group. They're all working with each other to try and hold off the peloton, but the peloton are changing, and there's a gap, 2 minutes and 16 seconds. So they're pegging it again. At the moment, they've closed it, but now they're being held, the pack.
Well, they don't want to catch them too soon. There are a number of teams in there. They've been in the saddle for more than 2¼ hours on stage 5 here, between McLaren Vale and, of course, between Wollonga Hill. And everyone having a party this afternoon, obviously, because it is, after all, Australia Day.
Go Uni SA on Australia Day, and the man from Uni SA is sat at the back of this breakaway, the 20-year-old Calvin Watson. He's been cheered all the way. 4 kilometers to go to the second and final Jayco Sprint competition. The first one went to Thomas de Gent. He just got a small time bonus, a few points and a couple of bob. Well, now let's see if he'll do it again. 52 kilometers to go. Be 103 kilometers covered when we get along to Snapper Point down the end of this road as we wind our way along Aldinga Beach. Doesn't seem to be too many cars down there at the moment, but it's catching the wind, and it's for South Australians, Paul, it's a pretty cool day at the moment.
Well, it certainly is. Only just over a week ago, the temperature soared to almost 45 degrees Celsius. We had one hot day a couple of days ago here in the Santos Tour Down Under when it tickled 38 degrees Celsius. But the last couple of days, I have to say, have been ideal racing conditions, probably giving the advantage across to the Europeans, who don't handle the kind of heat that the Aussies can quite so well. They're still working well, these riders together, still participating in sharing the pacemaking at the front, and everyone enjoying their Australia Day by the beach, right the way down there as they get the barbecues going, come up here to watch the race go by live, and then scuttle down to watch it live on television.
There's the view on the beach. The tents are all up now. There's more people going every time we come through, but this is the farewell lap of the Santos Tour Down Under. Once we're up to Snapper's Point, we're out onto the approach to the old Wollonga Hill.
Yep, that's what they're looking for next, and that will come at just 103 kilometers into the race. The second sprint point there, the Jayco Sprint Point at Snapper Point, and then it's lining up for Wollonga. It will be a massive charge into town, and it'll be a battle to be well placed at the front end of the main field at the start of that climb.
There's the tailwind heralding the riders, and out in the ocean, plenty of people enjoying themselves in the Southern Ocean as we now race along Aldinga Beach. Now, I remember last year, Paul, we had, I think, 6 riders in the lead at this point, and they were swept up as we got to Wollonga itself, and then there was a complete implosion of the peloton on the first ascent. It could well be doing that again this time around.
Well, I think tactically the two teams who would really like to hit the climb hard on the first ascent of the climb will be the Euskaltel-Euskadi team from Spain, who've got 2 riders up in the top 10 overall, and the team Movistar of Spain. They will try and toughen it up. They'll try and isolate Geraint Thomas if they can, but they'll have a hard time, I reckon, getting rid of Edvald Bosenhagen, because he'll probably be the last man standing alongside Geraint Thomas here this afternoon. He's a seriously talented bike rider, and he's the champion of Norway.
These boys are thinking now the Jayco sprint as they approach Snapper Point. Not very far to go. Watson going from left to right there. More people enjoying life on the verandas overlooking the breakaway, the same breakaway they've seen last time around. Enjoying the spectacle of a race which is now celebrating its 15th year here in South Australia. In these last few years it's been given the ranking at World Tour level. So it's the opening World Tour competition of the season.
Well, they're still happy to share the pacemaking when they pick up the tailwind, but it's once they get back into the headwind section of the course, it's going to make it that little bit more difficult. We'll start to see which of these guys are beginning to weaken. But I have to say, I'm extremely impressed, Phil, with the young Aussie just sitting over on the left-hand side there, 187, Calvin Watson, at 20 years of age. He certainly isn't scared of the opposition.
No, he's working very, very well indeed. Now, just round the headland there, 1 kilometre to go to the sprint. And we'll get round to Snapper Point as we get round that bend. Watson's in the back position. Whether he's interested or not, I'm not too sure he is. Certainly looks as though he's shaking his head a little bit there, but he's looking very cool and collected. I don't think he's under any duress. This is the approach now to the Jayco sprint, the second and final one of the day. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second comes off your overall ranking in the race. You also get points for the blue sprint jersey, which is being worn by Andre Greipel after his stage win yesterday, because the finishes are where you get the most Jayco points.
Amazing to think that Andre Greipel over the last few years has earned himself a total of 99 individual victories. Comes up with a win tomorrow around the streets of Adelaide. That will be win number 100, and I'm sure he's got that in the back of his mind. In fact, if it does come down to a sprint tomorrow, I'm really not sure who can beat the charging Andre.
No, well, he seems to be unbeatable when the course suits him, but we'll see. Now, anybody bothering Koen de Kort, no longer the leader on the road. He's the man in the white on the right. Calvin Watson is the other man in the white. And it looks as though Thomas de Gent has gone through again there, chasing through on the back wheel of Klaus Lodvik. This is Calvin.
Good-looking bike rider over when you look at his position there. He sits fairly well back over the pedals. That allows him to pedal with a lot more power. But I would say this young man is going to be a fairly reasonable climber as well.
And Calvin Watson may have got this because. Let's see where the line comes underneath. That's the Gent going through.
That's almost a photo finish.
They didn't race it, you see. They just were changing partners right on the line. Well, I still don't know from that angle. I think it might have been de Gent, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, once again, I think the Belgian rider managed to time it to perfection to get himself maximum points, 3 seconds time bonus. But look at the main field now. They're not too far behind as they're really under pressure as they start to stretch out into a very long line in this tailwind part of the course.
This is where the chase is on now. They're right at the entry to Aldinga Beach. The other boys are about to leave it, so they've got the length of the straight, but they are still working. But I don't think they've improved these last few kilometres at all. I think they're holding their own up front, and they might keep this gap now until we get into Wollonga. Still Jalingi on the front here, followed by Laurent Didier, then Graham Brown, then 2 riders now coming up for the Omega Farmer Quick-Step team.
Yeah, but hovering in the middle there is the rider who sits in second place in the overall standings, TJ Slachter of Team Blanco. He obviously is thinking about having a good go at this here this afternoon. He's a good climber, but he's also got an explosive sprint as well. Geraint Thomas needs to keep a very close eye on him, and mind you, he's got to keep a very close eye on about 20 riders really when we come to the final climb of the day.
It's a very difficult job for him, but the team have backed off, so they've saved a bit of strength in this last half hour of racing. Now they're going to look for Geraint Thomas as we head towards Wollonga and start to protect him as best they can. The orange jerseys of Euskadi has come through. The two riders there prominently. They're near the front. They're probably the two riders who are high placed in the overall classification. Lamprey are here as well. That might be a sign that Matthew Lloyd, who is a very good climber, but he's suffering from injury in this race, maybe he's feeling good.
Well, I could see him just riding fairly close to the front, Matty Lloyd. He obviously is an explosive climber, but because of the nature of the climb, look at that new gap coming in now, Phil. 1 minute and 49 seconds. From 4 minutes and 40 seconds in half a lap around Aldinga Beach, it's been shaved off by 3 minutes.
The peloton are coming. It's only a question of when they catch the leaders, because the leaders now are in more than just a spot of bother, as the race looks like coming all together as we head into Wollonga and the climb of the Old Wollonga Hill. The peloton are coming. They're inside 2 minutes is the gap. They're absolutely flying, and quite clearly the team of Blanco are driving it on. They have the utmost confidence in their youngster, who lies second overall, only 5 seconds behind Geraint Thomas, and that is Tom Schlachter, the man who won into Stirling. He really has got his tail up. He's not afraid of the hills either. He is a good stage racing youngster. Graham Brown here is on the same team as Schlachter, and even though he's bandaged up to the eyeballs after his big prang yesterday, he is doing his pulling his first share of the weight here. And this is Schlachter's other teammate, Zhang Lingyi, at the front, working hard.
Tell you what, it's hurting the guys at the back. There's a bit of organisation there. I just noticed the black and blue jersey of Team Sky looking after Geraint Thomas, trying to move him up towards the front end of this main line of riders. We've got serious pressure now. The peloton, when they came along the beach, average speed was 50.4 kilometers an hour, and that's because of the pressure coming on here from Martin Jellingi. Second place, Laurent Didier. Graham Brown bandaged up there in third place. He's looking after the sprinter climber from Blanco, Tom Schlachter, who Jack Bobridge calls TJ. And look at the line that they've stretched themselves out into now. Really is going to be the battle of Old Wollonga Hill once again. Quick look at the leaders now. Calvin Watson there. Well, the average speed of the leaders along the same part of the course there was not too bad either, Phil, at 48.5 kilometers an hour.
Serious face of Günter Kort here, one-time leader on the road, just doing his little turn at the front. And now it's Boro who comes through for Tinkoff, Saxo Tinkoff. There are two banks, by the way, that's merged together in the sponsorship of this team from Denmark. And this is Jens Muris. Now let's have a look how we go. We've moved right along the 3 circuits now. We've gone through the 2 sprints. We're now heading back towards Wollonga, and then the stepping stone up to the climb, first lap of the Wollonga Hill. The second time up, we finish right on the top of the climb.
Well, talk about a sting in the tail. A sting in the tail at the end of a week-long race, and at the end of a very long stage as well. There's Matt Heyman on the far side. You can just see the ochre jersey of Geraint Thomas. I'm trying to look and see if the body language is telling us anything. He looks calm and relaxed. He's focused behind those dark glasses of his. And as always, it's Matty Heyman, the Australian, who's looking after him.
Yes, he's just staying cool, calm and collected at the moment, but he must have seen the writing on the wall here with the way the Blanco team are getting ready to launch Tom Schlachter on the climb. And I think I would have been a bit closer to Schlachter at this moment in time. If you're leading the race, you tend to follow your second man around.
Well, I think the fact is he's quite comfortable because he's got a big powerhouse of Matty Heyman in front of him. He's only riding in around about 20th position. He's leaving the riders from Blanco to do all of that pacemaking. Once they get closer to Wollonga, Phil, you'll see him riding in the first 5 to 10 places.
It's a Tassie rider in white there, Bernie Salzberger. Comes from a famous cycling family. His sister also races very well indeed at the moment. She got medal at the recent championships in Ballarat and Buninyong. Less than an hour of racing now for the whole field, even though they will slow slightly. There is the length of our picture, and you can see the movement up front of the breakaway. 40 kilometres or 25 miles to go to the finish. The peloton have got these riders in sight as they're now developing their own tactics. That diagonal line across the road indicating the wind is coming from top right of our picture.
That gap now is down to just a 1 minute margin. It won't be very long now before they start to pull all the team cars out of that gap to keep the gap nice and sterile. But obviously Blanco have a lot of confidence in their man this afternoon, TJ Slagter. He did finish 4th in the Tour de l'Avenir a couple of years ago. Well, they're saying the gap is a minute and 30 seconds. I think it might just be a little bit inside of that. It's coming down all the time. That's what we know for certain.
Yes, absolutely right. And just seeing number 124 there, that's Roberto Ferrari, the sprinter who was right up and got narrowly beaten by Greipel in Tanunda yesterday. He's still up here at this stage of the race.
Well, I think what he's doing this afternoon, he's trying to look after his own teammate Matty Lloyd to keep him in a good position at the front end of the peloton before the start of the climb. I tell you, Jalingi here is really hammering. He's number 77. He's on the front ahead of Graham Brown here. He is absolutely turning himself inside out for the team here this afternoon. You know, they must have had a serious talk with TJ Slagter this morning, who's told them, I can beat Geraint Thomas, I can get that 5-second time bonus, I can get the 10-second time bonus, and I can win this bike race for you.
And he's certainly advertising it that way at the moment, and Jalingi's job now is to chase until his legs will chase no more and they get home to suit himself. 75 is Slagter on the left of our picture. He's sitting there on the wheel of a teammate, David Tanner. The Australian who led him out in Stirling so successfully. Once Slagter went for the line, nobody could get near him. And the two that got nearest were Matt Goss and the world champion Philippe Gilbert. But they were a long way back on the line.
They were an awful long way back, and I think he really got the jump on them when he came into the last 200 or 300 meters. And he actually was very, very thankful to his teammate Tanner, who's just in front of him, as you said there, Phil, because Tanner is the one who said, come on, get on my wheel and I'll set you up for this one.
44, Ben Hermans, expect to see something from him. That's hit the target and throw your bottles. It's catching on in Australia. I saw that at the National Championships as well in Buninyong. Now leading around the corner is Koen de Kort. They're still clear, but the gap is now tumbling, a minute 14, and that was the big gap, a big surge by Jalingi.
And this is the right-hand turn they've just taken. This is the slight undulation as they start to head back towards McLaren Vale. And this is where they'll pick up a slight headwind as well. And that will make it very difficult for these guys to survive, I think, on the way now down to Wollonga, because the main field are very, very close.
Wollonga is literally around the corner, and it could be, when we get there, there'll be seconds between the head of the race and the bunch. Absolutely flying through the vineyards now of McLaren Vale, as it all under the impetus of Martin Jalingi. There he is, drinking on the run here just at the moment, trying to close down just over a minute to those 7 leaders and trying to close it down before they arrive in Wollonga, which is where they start the climb of the hill first time up. They really are speeding over the ground just at the moment. They've been going for just on 2 hours and 40 minutes. They're inside the final hour of racing. So they know now they want to clear up the debris in front and then fight out as to who will win this race when it ends tomorrow.
Well, Graham Brown this morning said that they did everything right yesterday to protect their man, TJ Slagter, and stop Geraint Thomas getting any of the time bonuses. And he reckons that he's a good enough climber to create the surprise here this afternoon. But it's all going to have to be done on that final ascent up Old Wollonga Hill. But you've got to be well placed the first time up, because what happens if you ride too far back? A lot of riders lose contact on the climb, and it opens up gaps very quickly, and you don't want to be caught up behind a traffic jam.
The leaders here still trying to work well together. Jens Maurice on the front. This is Maczynski here, who slips to the back now. Up in the white jersey, Calvin Watson on the wheel there of Klaas Ludwig.
But every
There's
time,
a bit of a split here. Actually, they're starting to struggle here with the speed.
well, it's all because of the speed of Thomas de Gent. He is the strongest rider, the most experienced rider in this leading group of 7 riders, and he obviously wants to put the hammer down a little bit more to see whether or not he could get to the start of the climb with a slight advantage over the peloton.
That's the thing. If he could get to the climb, or even to the top of the climb, he might be able to find the strength to join in with the advanced party as it goes on. Cycling Live Strong moves on, and that's a reference to the doping scandal concerning Lance Armstrong there. Well, the sport has certainly moved on since then, as the people here have shown this week in South Australia. 108,000 watched the prelude to this race, the prologue as it were. And now a new gap for the first time for a long time. We're now inside 1 minute to go. And it is Graham Brown, who's won 2 gold medals on the track at the Olympic Games, doing all of the pacemaking. Jack Bobridge right up behind him, and he will be the first man to go on the mountain, I suspect, hopefully with Tom Slagter.
Well, men like Graham Brown at the front here and Bobridge in second position there, they are thinking about their race finishing at Wollonga before the start of the climb. They've got to get all of their energy out before then they can hand over the race to their team leader Slagter, who is currently in second place overall, looking for 5 seconds. A lot of pressure on that youngster's shoulders at just 23 years of age. You can see the hands coming out from the riders there. That's just to warn of an obstacle in the road to make sure everyone's nice and safe. There was a small car over to the right-hand side. These guys communicate like that all of the time.
Graham Brown now the pacemaker, but how much longer can Graham keep up stamping on those pedals like that? Coming through McLaren Vale, a sharp right-hand turn there for the peloton. 59 seconds the gap. They can virtually reach out now and touch them. Those 7-man lead group will find that team cars will be stopped now behind them to open up a void between the breakaway and the bunch. This is the breakaway. This is Buro, the Italian. The average speed at the moment's come down into the wind. This is the whole race average at the moment. It's quite a good one at 43.4. Average speed for the 117 kilometres covered thus far.
Well, once they get out of McLaren Vale this time, Phil, and on the long straight, the long road up to Wollonga, the main field will have them perfectly in their sights. We pull back a fraction here, it gives us a chance to see just exactly where the peloton is.
Almost the same average speed for the peloton now, because they are progressively closing in on that breakaway. Not caught them yet, though. Might be still a little bit of fight in them, especially from Thomas de Gent, who might try to leave that breakaway if he can get onto the Wollonga Hill still in the lead.
This is Gert Stegemans, a big sprinter, won a stage in the Tour de France a couple of years ago into Ghent when he was supposed to be leading out his teammate Tom Bonen. In fact, on that occasion, Tom Bonen couldn't go by him, so the Belgian rider got himself that stage victory. He now is trying to set this up for the Belgian rider on their squad, Serge Pauwels. Pauwels is down in around about 19th place in the overall standings, just outside of 30 seconds in arrears.
32 kilometres or 20 miles to go to the finish now. So the riders are in McLaren Vale. The next stop will be Wollonga, and after that we're on the climb of the old Wollonga Hill, lap number 1. The whole peloton now heading on the long straight into Wollonga itself as they turn their backs on McLaren Vale for the end of the day now. We're heading this time straight up the hill. They're still clear, but they're closing in rapidly.
Well, as we're joined by Robbie McEwen. Robbie, it's got to ask you the question. This is a good finish for Simon Gerrans. We know he had some health problems in the early part of the week. Has he got over those health problems?
He says he's feeling better, but maybe not 100%. He also said that it's not going to stop him giving 100%. He's going to try with everything he's got in the final part of the stage. We've also got Simon Clark and Luke Durbridge out there. They haven't gotten themselves into the early break. So now their job will be to try and go with any moves that are going off the front and see if they can just pop into a breakaway that will, one thing, take pressure off our own team to do anything. Let Simon just concentrate on the last climb up Wollonga Hill. But also I believe Luke Durbridge and Simon Clark in the right group could actually win the stage.
Just looking at the gap coming down to just 42 seconds now. You might have noticed the flags at the side of the road. It's a block headwind here. Is it a block headwind on the climb as well?
Well, you can see down here it's against the riders, but this side of the hill is relatively well protected. It will funnel around a little bit and hit them in certain sections, but it's really quite still on the climb, so that will make it a good opportunity for someone to go off the front solo as they hit those less steep sections towards the top. If someone's alone, they won't have a big disadvantage to guys riding in the wheel chasing them.
Certainly the Australia Day flags on the finishing banner here are still. There's no wind at all on top of the hill, but there is a drift. Either way, these 12 boys now are concentrating solely on the capture and then to see if their team leaders have the legs to win the day. It is going to be a most interesting few minutes now. Geraint Thomas knows everybody is hunting for that ochre jersey, and there's 20 riders in this race. If the cards came down in the right order, could take it on this climb.
I think Geraint Thomas, number 37 there, his biggest ally over the last ascent of the climb, Robbie, is going to be number 31 there, Edvald Bosenhagen, champion of Norway. He's a serious competitor, one of the most talented bike riders on Team Sky.
He really is. He is just so very versatile and really, really strong. He can climb, he can time trial, he can sprint, he can do it all. As for the rest of the team, they have said this week this is their classics team. These are the guys that are a bit more powerfully built, sprinter types, you know, for the cobbled classics. They're not climbers, so there is an opportunity for other teams to take advantage of that, try and get rid of as many Sky riders as they can, isolate Thomas, and then a team like Movistar that's built around climbers, they can try and take advantage of that the last time onto the climb.
Thomas Schlechter there, number 75. He's a bit boxed in at the moment, but he's on the right team. He's all those boys in blue and black jerseys are his teammates, and they've put him on the whip end of the line. So when they see a clear road, they're going to try and move him forward.
Robbie, since the start of today's stage, we've been very impressed by the way that the guys in the orange jerseys, Euskaltel, Euskadi, have been riding. They've got 2 riders in the top 10 in the overall standings, Gorka and Ion Izagir. Now, they are a kind of team that will go ballistic on a climb like this.
This is the stage they've been thinking about all week. It really suits their characteristics as climbers. It's a very similar type of climb to what they're used to in their homeland, in the Basque country, up there, right up in the north of Spain. And the Euskaltel riders have always been renowned for putting out the big attacks on the big climbs. And with guys in 6th and 7th overall, it gives them 2 options. They can play off each other. And there's a lot of good climbers in that team. And that can be another team. With the Spanish connection with Movistar, I think we could see a bit of cooperation between those teams to really drive the pace, isolate Thomas. But I think even if he only has Bosenhagen with him and they can get to the final time at the climb together, I actually think Thomas is going to be the strongest.
42 kilometres they've averaged in the last 10 kilometres of riding. This is the average speed of the leaders. As we now at the end of the gun sight here is Willunga itself. This time no turning around the bollards. It is straight up the hill. It's 3 kilometres of purgatory, quite frankly. 44.1 for the peloton. That's why they're closing in. Now they're reshuffling the pack, and I can see moving up on the outside the team Astana also moving their men to the front.
Robbie, when we come up, it's not necessarily the first climb that's important, but it's very important to be well placed on this first climb because there's such a big crowd here. The road is very narrow. You want to be in the first 10 or 15 positions.
Yeah, you need to be quite near the front that you don't miss any little splits and waste unnecessary energy. I was just going to mention Thomas De Gendt.
Yes.
He's a guy, he was hoping they would give him some leeway, that he could get to the climb with a small gap. And I said earlier to someone, I think if he does get there, he'll leave this group behind and really go for it and try and ride on to the finish. He's a guy who's won the stage of the Giro d'Italia over the Stelvio. You know, up in the biggest mountains in Europe. Willunga Hill for him is not that big, and he thinks I can take that on twice all by myself.
Yeah, well, they're not giving him a free card out there. He was hoping maybe that he'd have about a minute advantage by the time they got to Willunga Hill, and then he would have tried to jump out of that pack. But there's now going to be a major battle in this group to try and place your overall contender into the first part of the main field. I'm just looking to see where Team Sky is. They're right behind the riders from Team Blanco.
Well, we've got rid of all the circuits now around Aldinga Beach, so those 3 circuits are now behind us, all the sprints. We are coming up into the town of Wollonga, and then we start the climb 3 kilometres up. Moving up on the outside, just ahead of the boys in orange, is Geraint Thomas. The catch is virtually going to be timed to be right on the line here. They've already sat up. Calvin Watson has gone back, so too has Klaus Ludwig. These boys pushing on. Jens Maurice looks over and sees them. What's the point, he says. Koen de Kort doesn't want to go through. Neither does Thomas de Gent now. They're going to come together as they start the first climb.
It looks like Thomas de Gent has actually drifted backwards. It's, I think, his teammate Marcinski who's up there with Jens Maurice, Koen de Kort, and the Saxo Tinkoff rider also. They will get to the bottom of the climb, but I think it's almost over.
But just look how clever Geraint Thomas was there. He waited. He's been out of the wind all day today. He's been hiding in the main peloton. He's always had Matt Hayman alongside him. But now that it's become important, all of a sudden, bang, there he is at the front of the pack.
Yeah, perfectly positioned now for the climb, looking a lot more concentrated than he was earlier. Just the Polish member, Tomasz Marcinski, still trying to push on alone. But the others are all together. No turn around the bollards. Now they know the hill starts right out of this town. There's no respite now for 3 kilometres to the finishing line. But then there is one further lap of about 21 kilometres to go.
Very difficult once you get over the top of Old Wollonga Hill the first time, because it doesn't go straight downhill. There's a false flat, a little bit of a plateau to race along for quite some time. As you look here at Marcinski, he's a fair way down in the overall standings, but that is where the winner of the Santos Tour Down Under is going to come from this year, in the front of that group of riders, and they're all waiting for the moment to see who will be the first one to launch the aggression.
We're about to find out now as Thomas gets onto the climb itself. The other boys will slowly drop back. The peloton will come to them. It's up for, initially, I think, to somebody to attack, perhaps like Moreno, perhaps maybe the riders in orange, Euskaltel, Euskadi. They're going to take the sting on, because I don't think Geraint Thomas will attack until he is attacked himself.
No, I think the first offensive will more than likely come from maybe a cocktail of Movistar and Euskaltel Euskadi. They'll want to make this race the first time up the climb as hard as possible to get rid of the non-climbers, to try and possibly isolate Geraint Thomas if that's something they feel they can do. There's a move coming up the outside, but look at the orange jerseys over to the left-hand side there. Those are the riders from the Basque Country.
On the left there looks to me like Bernard Salzberger, and I tipped him this morning as a dark horse. But another team I think would like to make the race hard is Radio Shack for Tiago Machado. He really is such a natural climber. We saw him go on the attack there in Stirling. He did blow up, but then maintained his position back in the bunch. And he's earmarked this stage to make a big run for the jersey.
Well, he did last year. He was third up the climb last year, and that gave him third place overall. And just before they came into Wollonga, he was moving very smoothly up the outside of the pack. So he's in a good position to launch an attack.
Well, there we see the big Dutchman, Jens Maurice from Orica Green Edge. Done a fantastic job for the team, getting in the break and being one of the last survivors along there with Manuel Ibuaro from the Saxo Tinkoff team. You see he's pretty beaten up from yesterday, a bit of skin off. They went down at high speed in the run into Tanunda, but bike riders are pretty tough blokes.
We've got to bounce back from an accident like that. I have to say, looking at the bandages all over Graham Brown, you have to wonder what sort of pain his body's going through here this afternoon. In control now at the front end of the main field, it's the riders in the black and blue jerseys of Team Sky. They've done this so many times before. This climb is a climb of just inside of 3 kilometres, an average gradient of around about 7%. But there is a blustery wind out there. You can see in the leaves in the eucalyptus trees at the side of the road that the wind is swirling around quite a bit.
I think once they get halfway up the climb, they get a bit more protection on the side of the hill. The wind is coming from the other side. So with the last kilometre and a half, they should get a bit more protection under the trees and against the embankment. But I tell you what, when you get there and the race is at the pointy end, you really don't feel you're getting any protection.
Little acceleration here from Buro. He's leaving Jens Maurice to try and go up and join Marcinski. In fact, Maurice has decided to go back into the pack. The old leg's gone. He carries a lot of weight up a climb. This boy doesn't, and he's now trying to catch up with Marcinski, who's setting the pace.
Well, this is just a last little flurry, I think, to get a bit of extra television time, because the main field behind, they're under control. The attack hasn't come just yet, and they seem to be being put to sleep a fraction. There's the Movistar move.
And I've been waiting for someone like Jose Ivan Gutierrez, one of the other Movistar riders, to pick up the pace, maybe even JJ Rojas to go out, pick up this pace. I'm also expecting to see Jack Bobridge fairly shortly wearing that Mountains competition leader jersey.
Looks like Amador here, the big boy on the front, who started to lift the pace just a little bit. Now remember, we are dicing for seconds gained and lost here to win this tour, and it may be it's going to be showdown next time up if it doesn't split on this climb.
Sky were very clever there, though, Robbie, weren't they? They checked which were the two Movistar riders who were launching the attack, and they said, well, they're way down in the overall standings. We don't need to move just yet.
No, they know they only need to respond to guys who are important on the overall classification. These guys want to push the pace, but Sky, as you said, have absolutely no reason to shut them down. They can just let them go, keep their tempo, ride back into the wheels when they feel like it.
3 hours on the nail, so they've got about half an hour left to ride now. Movistar, the dangerous team from Spain, have put 2 men into the pacemaking at the front.
Also see Chris Jules Jensen, I think it is, coming across towards the two Movistar riders. He's been active pretty much every day of this race.
He's riding well. And I've never seen him race before. But
must have been the Gold Coast training camp.
He can only be riding alongside Robbie McEwen, I'm sure of that.
Despite that.
Oh, despite that, okay, Robbie. Heros Capecchi it is who's come forward with Jose Arada. Those are the two riders now. The peloton is stringing out, but it's not cracking up at the moment. As we continue up the climb, first lap up the old Wollonga Hill, the leader on the road is still Marcinski.
Well, I think I just spotted Jack Bobridge popping out of the front of that group. The peloton is slowly being put to sleep here by Team Sky, who are just setting the pace and keeping an eye on the numbers of the riders escaping. If I'm not mistaken, the white jerseyed rider who just slipped onto the back may well be Bobridge, who'll be looking for points.
I tell you what, if he pulls off the 16 points for being first over the top, that will likely win him the King of the Mountains, because it's going his way at the moment. As we're looking at the Polish rider Marcinski head up the chasing. No, it's actually an AG. Is it Polka Dot jersey? AG2R, yes.
You can always tell by the colour of those shorts.
Yes, most unattractive short, I must confess.
I'm not a fan. I think it might be Guillaume Bonifant that's made his way across there.
Yes, it is Guillaume Bonifant, yeah. He's got onto the back, and but they've got no advantage at all now, really. But there's 4 riders trying to go clear.
Well, I'm a bit surprised here, Robbie, because Team Sky, very, very crowded. They've just let these guys go. They're just setting the tempo. They're almost putting the peloton to sleep with their false tempo. It's not going to be comfortable sitting in that group here as we get towards the summit here of Wollonga Hill, but it's also discouraging the attacks.
There's very little happening. They have just rocked the peloton to sleep, as they say, but I guess the exciting thing about that is a lot of guys are going to have a lot of energy for the final climb up to the top of this hill, and that's where the real fireworks are going to go off.
Well, to run and blow the Vuvuzela is a real feat, I must say, on the climb of the Wollonga Hill. As we're heading up towards the top of the climb, that's the freeway running on the right. It just touches the shoulder of it and then gets back into the trees here. This is good tempo riding, but, you know, somebody that matters has got to attack Geraint Thomas in that main field.
Well, these two riders from Movistar from Spain keep looking over their shoulders. They're trying to set up some kind of a launch pad if they can. But what needs to happen for Moreno, Javier Moreno, he needs to jump out of the pack from behind. But I'm not sure that he wants to, because it's still a very long ride to go right the way around. And it catches people off guard. You think, well, I'll jump away on the top of Wollonga Hill and I can survive to the finish. But we've seen in the past, haven't we, Robbie McEwen, sprinters getting dislodged on the climb and coming back to win the stage.
It is a very long way around this lap, especially when the wind's not coming from the right direction for the breakaway riders.
The legs
as we
just
see someone
cracked.
come to a standstill.
This is Marcinski, and the legs just cracked here as up from behind comes the chasing groups now. A sudden acceleration. It came from Lotto Bellisfol at the front, and it looks like Jürgen Roelandts, the man who a year ago wasn't in the race at this stage. A terrible crash, and he broke the number 6 vertebrae. It pretty much ruined his season, because he also broke his collarbone in October in a race in Belgium. But he's back now.
And this is a great ride from a guy who essentially is a sprinter, He's in such good shape. I think he's really excited to come back to the Santos Tour Down Under this year and show that last year, while he was out with broken bones, he loves this race. He likes to put on a good performance, and that's a very strong jump he's made to cross that gap to these guys.
Very impressive move to come across that gap. Now we're looking at a four-man leading group. This is the Skoda first category climb of Old Wollonga Hill Road. Now these guys could very well steal the show. The Movistar guys, Robbie, I think are a little bit confused because yes, they're trying to set this up for their man, but it's not quite working the way they wanted it to.
You can see them looking back, checking if anybody's coming across. They're really not quite sure what to do. It hasn't had the desired effect. They wanted to make the race hard, but as Sky just let them go, none of their teammates or no other GC contenders tried to come across. It's a stalemate.
And again, if a four-man breakaway goes clear, first, second and third time bonus seconds have disappeared.
Sky will only look at the guys who are really close in GC, and preferably they'd like to see those bonus seconds taken away. And on the other hand, if everything comes back together, I think that Geraint Thomas will have everybody's measure anyway.
Well, there's two guys trying to get across the gap, but I think, Robbie, that's a much bigger group than I've seen at the top of Old Wollonga Hill in a number of years.
They never rode up there that easy when I was racing.
I think they were always trying to get rid of you, Robbie.
I have that effect on people, Paul.
Anyway, these guys, they will, again, I don't think that there's a Movistar rider coming across there. I wonder if it's the right one.
It looks like Amador.
So the leaders are over the top four men now versus the rest as they go on their lap of the Old Wollonga Hill finish next time. Four riders still clear as they make their way from the top of the Wollonga Hill. Capecchi and Herrera of Movistar, Bonafont of AG2R and Rowlands of the Lotto Belisol team. There they are, they slipped away and they're making a little bit of progress here.
Well, Team Sky have absolutely no reason to chase these four guys down, and none of them dangerous at all in the overall standings. As far as they're concerned, all of the time bonuses have disappeared.
Yes, a very interesting move by Team Sky if it does work out in this manner, because all the bonuses are gone, and then all that Geraint Thomas would need to do is to follow the riders close so they don't pinch any real-time gaps off him. So it's a perfect scenario for Team Sky. It's up to the others now to attack Geraint Thomas. They lost one chance on the climb, and these three boys got away. Just over 3 hours in the seat. Now we should be finished by the time we get to 3:30 in the afternoon here. Or it'll be 3:30, yeah. Coming up towards 3 o'clock locally here in South Australia. Astana come to the front, inviting anybody out. You're not going to get the boys in black to make any move.
You can see that Sky are really not bothered about this four-man breakaway out the front. No. Most of them are quite a long way behind. Rowlands at over 6 minutes with 18 kilometres to go. Bonafont is the best classified rider of that breakaway at just over 2 minutes. So Sky can't relax too much. They don't want to let things get out of hand. If something happens to Thomas, they need to wait. The break gets a bit more of a gap. Bonafont generally becomes a threat.
Yes, he does, but I think those guys from Sky, they know exactly how to handle this. They also know that they'll build up a bit of an advantage over this part of the course, but when we go down the descent to go back down to Wollonga, the descent is so fast it's impossible to extend your advantage on the downhill section. Everybody will be going at 100 kilometres an hour.
No, and the thing that really affects the breakaway is that final run from that last corner, about 5 kilometres to go, all the way down into the township of Wollonga. Like we said before, it's a block headwind. These guys have made the effort to break away. They're putting in the work to try and extend their gap. But any riders left in the peloton working for a team leader, they'll shorten that gap right in that final 4 or 5 kilometres down to the bottom of the climb.
Guillaume Bonafont just gone off to the right of our picture. This is Eros Capecchi of Team Movistar. He was the first man up the mountain this time. If he was first up the mountain next time, he would take the lead in the King of the Mountains competition.
And that's a little calculation that Jack Bobridge will be trying to figure out himself. There are a couple more mountain points available around Adelaide. That's what the standings look like currently. Bobridge with 20 points. Capecchi coming up into third place with the same number of points as Geraint Thomas. It could all go down to the final day for the decision on who will be the King of the Mountains at this year's Santos Tour Down Under.
It's also a very real possibility that we could see Geraint Thomas also leading the mountains classification, and maybe wearing that Skoda Mountain jersey under his leader's jersey tomorrow. But also Marino, he's not far away on those points, and he will also figure in the finish and take points.
That's what we would expect, but first of all they've got to catch those 4 leaders up front. Astana are now throwing their effort into the chase here as we go off. We're in the area just a bit further back where Matthew Lloyd spectacularly crashed out a few years ago when he was not on a top professional team. He suffered sunstroke. It was a very, very hot day. Little flick of the elbow there by Kopecky now. No problems. Jürgen Roland straight through, followed by Bonofon. This is a good move, but 2 against 2 here because there's 2 Movistar riders on the attack.
But it's still a good situation for Movistar to be in, because if they do survive and get to the start of the climb on the final time, there's still a launch pad for Marino to try something as they make their way up to the finish line. But today I'm a bit surprised to see it being a bit of a waiting game from the 2 Spanish teams, who I expected to light the dynamite on the first descent.
Well, even though this move hasn't really worked the way they maybe originally planned to make the race harder, to really light things up and thin out the bunch and maybe isolate Geraint Thomas, what the Movistar riders can now do is try and maintain this gap, get onto the climb before the bunch arrives, and like you say, provide a springboard for their teammate Marino. He can try and launch himself out of the bunch and get across to his 2 teammates, who can take up the work of the pace setter for a short time, give him that morale that he's got someone to follow, and try and get him on towards the finish if he can dislodge Thomas and all the rest.
Just look at this, Sky and turning their heads like corkscrews, trying to see who is going to be next to attack. The other Movistar riders are now moving up the front here to try and break up the chase. They've got the 2 teammates up front. They'll be thinking maybe of launching Moreno, but not until we get to the next part of the climb.
Well, Sky have handled that climb very well. They've still got a large number of riders. You can see Geraint Thomas just sitting in the middle there, Robbie. There he is in the ochre jersey. He's hardly had to turn a pedal in anger this afternoon. And I reckon, look at the speed here. We're looking at 90, 95, 96, 97.
Go on, push it. Let's see the 100. There it is. They've hit 100 kilometers an hour. They're on the way down back to the vineyards. And it looks as though Jürgen Roland's the demon descender, even though he did crash in this race last year. He's no fears of going downhill. 14.5 kilometers to go.
Well, the gap is not huge yet. It's only about 30 seconds. A little push there to the teammate as the rider in front, Roland, gets himself into an aerodynamic tuck position, very much like a ski. It's not something that you should try at home, this, is it, Robbie?
No, you also shouldn't try this out on the open road, but it's very effective on a fast downhill like this. If you see Jürgen Roland open up that gap without even trying, he's a bit more heavily built than the other riders, and he opens that gap on the downhill. Well, it's the opposite sort of thing that happens on the uphill when those kilos start to work against you.
Got Matty Goss on the front, I think, at the moment, trying to pull the Orica Green Edge riders back into this race as they're trying to position Simon Geraint. If he is feeling good, he may go for a long one on the climb itself. But look at this, for the art of going downhill, it's a separate talent as well as going uphill. And Jürgen Roland looks to be the expert of these 4. He's freewheeling away from them.
Well, not every bike rider in the sport of professional cycling knows how to go downhill very well. It's a skill that you have to learn, and I think, Robbie, it's a lot to do with the position on the bike that some guys have. Climbers having a completely different position to sprinters, for example.
It's a position on the bike. It's a sense of balance. It's a bit of the bravery and
the foolery.
You could call it. That's probably what I meant.
The risk takers. And this is quite a good descent now. It's a pretty safe one. There are 1 or 2 bends, but they're not acute like the one that caught out 35, 40 riders on Corkscrew Hill. They should come back to Roland's on this descent.
Well, actually, Roland's looked over his shoulder there. A clever professional bike rider. He doesn't want to ride away on his own. He knows there's a long ride up to Wollonga. 53 kilometers an hour almost for the leaders.
That's the average speed over the last 9 kilometers. Are these 4 going to survive? They've still got to come round to Wollonga, and then they've got to do it all again, but this time to the finish. Claren Vale is where we are. Wollonga is the exact point. We're about to make a left turn, and then we'll be on the old climb of the old Wollonga Hill. They've been in the saddle for 3 hours 20 minutes. These 4 riders are still clear, but any second now you'll see the heads of the chasing coming over that hill. Joined by Robin McEwen in the commentary box at the moment, and he's enjoying every minute of it because today he doesn't have to climb the hill.
It definitely is a change, and one I'm enjoying. I do have to say that the question I get asked the most over the last 8 months since I retired is, do you miss it? Are you getting itchy feet? Do you want to be out there? I look at a stage like this and say, no, thanks, I'm quite happy where I am.
Well, I'll wait and I'll ask you the same question in July when you start to see the Pyrenees and the Alps and the Mont Ventoux looming up on the horizon.
Here's the left turn, another massive crowd down there. They line up. This is the road, takes them straight back into Wollonga now. And then straight up the climb, which is 3 kilometers from the start to the top. And somebody has got to go very low down this climb. If they're going to hit Geraint Thomas, they've got to go.
Well, that's what they need to do. The gap has come down from 15 seconds to 10 seconds to that leading group of 4. But I think the 2 Movistar riders in that 4-man leading group, they're just hovering. In fact, it looks like it's stretched out a little bit more than 10 seconds. The average speed of the race so far is only just inside of 43 kilometers an hour. So it's been pretty fast around Aldinga Beach.
Has been fast around that big flat 40-kilometre circuit past the beaches. What I noticed a moment ago was the peloton really lost its sense of urgency, fanned out across the road, and that gap has opened back up. It seems they don't want to catch them just yet. They want to let them just hang out there and waste away, really.
It's an in-fight situation at the moment. They'll probably get swept up by the impetus of the peloton once they get onto the slopes of the climb. But until then, I don't know. Now, is this a plan being hatched by Orica Greenedge, Stuart O'Grady, taking them to Wollonga?
Well, here we see him, the old warhorse himself, Stewie O'Grady. He'll be one of those riders, like I mentioned, not the designated leader, not a specialist climber for this type of finish. He's getting out that last bit of work, trying to help his teammates bring this gap down, string the peloton out. I'll have a couple of other guys trying to place riders like Simon Gerrans, Simon Clark. This guy here on the right, Luke Durbridge, just ridden right from the back of the bunch all the way to the front. It's actually curious today to see if he would try and get up and have a go for himself or just become a pure workhorse.
Well, the nod has obviously been given to Stuart O'Grady that somebody in the team has got the legs to have a good go at this here this afternoon.
Maybe Luke.
Durbridge having a little chat there with Matty Heyman just on the inside. Maybe you're asking for Team Sky to start working at the front as well.
I just saw the little signal between each other, and Luke did that little sort of turning signal with his finger, which wants to say to the other guy, listen, let me into the line. I'm going to start working. I'm going to ride on the front.
Therefore, that would indicate that it's going to be number 1 they're going to look after here this afternoon. And that, of course, Simon Gerrans maybe has got the legs to put in the sprint that almost brought him the victory on this stage last year, just getting nicked on the line by Alejandro Valverde.
It was so close last year, and I know Simon's disappointed about how the Santos Tour Down Under has gone for him this year. He's had those problems, hasn't been feeling so good. But this is his last chance to try and get something out of this race, and we just know he's going to try as hard as he can, and I hope he's feeling a bit better, because it'd be lovely to see Orica Greenedge, especially an Australian, any Australian, win this stage on Australia Day.
It would be perfect, and there's no doubt now that Orica Greenedge have got a plan and they're putting it into operation. They've taken over control of the peloton. They're riding. Tom Slexter down there, number 75. He is the rider who is going to have to move now. He needs 5 seconds to become the next leader of this tour.
Now, the big question now is when you're 23 years of age and you've got the responsibility of a big professional team on your shoulders, can he accept that responsibility? The team have worked their hearts out for him this afternoon. Now he has to come up with the goods and pay them back. But I'm almost amazed, just looking at the front there, Stuart O'Grady, he's going to be 40 years of age in August of this year, and he's still got the enthusiasm of when he was a junior.
40's really quite young, Paul.
It is exceptionally young in my case, yeah.
But I'm just talking of Tom Jelte-Slagter there. He's 23. He's got a big responsibility. But I think also for him, it is just really, really exciting for him to be the designated team leader. And I'll be very curious to see how Thomas approaches this finish. Is he worried about being beaten in a sprint to the top by Slagter? Will he try and offload him himself? So go from being the hunter to the hunted. He's got to take care of the Movistar guys and cover them, but I think he probably needs to, for safety's sake, get rid of Slagter so he can't take those bonus seconds.
96 there, Javier Moreno sits 6 seconds off the race lead. He's still in the heart of the pack there, as Jens Voigt, another old man of the peloton, centre right, is 41 years of age and stamping on those pedals. Now here come the orange jerseys of Euskaltel Euskadi. They've got 2 men who could win this race. They're trying to guide them to the front. This time up the hill, there's going to be a whole flurry of attacks. Who's up for it, I wonder.
I now see the team of Omega Pharma Quick-Step massing towards the front. They'll be trying to ride for Jerome Pinot, but also Serge Bowles, a very good Belgian climber, spent some time on the Sky team. He's been at this race a number of times and been really powerful uphill. You see the contenders really massing the front. There's Machado, number 45, just towards the right-hand side, next to CJ Sutton in black. He's a guy I think will go for an early one up here.
156 and 155 there, the riders from Euskaltel Euskadi.
156 we're interested in now.
And 151.
Yeah, they're both there, look. They're the two Izzy Gears, 156 and 151. They occupy 5th and 6th place overall. They're all getting up there. They know that every second literally will count now and could swing this race in a completely different direction.
Robbie, just in the middle there, riding behind the rider in the blue jersey, Adam Hansen. He's the best Australian in the overall standings. What's his chances of a crack on a climb like this?
Well, I don't expect him to win the overall classification. He's another sort of classics type rider, a bit more heavily built. He climbs quite well, but then when you look at the real climbers, I think they're going to have his measure, but he's going to make the best of it. He's the best classified Australian, so let's hope he can move right up there.
These 4 riders are going to make the start of the climb. By the look of it, they're into the streets of Wollonga, and it just shows how well they are going, because the front of that peloton is really riding now. 43 gaps, they're pulling it away just now. O'Grady's just come off the front and dropped to the back of the field, but Durbridge is still trying to mix it.
When you look at the strength and the way that these riders went clear in the early kilometres of the climb last time round, I think they've got the power to stay clear with a 43-second advantage.
Almost went down there.
Got to be very careful. And the 2 Spanish riders, they're the ones who took up the pacemaker. They're pulling the car out only, I think, because we're about to get to the climb. They don't want any confusion on the climb. But I have a feeling, and the way Guido Roelants came across, I'm not sure these guys are going to get caught.
I still think they'll get caught, and I think in this last few hundred metres to the foot of the climb, they'll lose a big chunk of that advantage.
Yeah, I think so too, but we'll see. Jens Voigt has got the head of affairs now to try and launch Team Radio Shack on the offensive. They've had a great tour. They have 3 men in with a chance of winning this race. They lead in the team race, and the oldest man in the race, Voigt, is taking them to the start of the climb. They're still clear, these 4, as they begin the ride to the summit.
Look at Jens Voigt, they're just squeezing every last little bit out. He's pulling the peloton into a single file line, and that into a headwind and slightly uphill. He's got his whole, most of his team in his wheel. They've been looking after Machado. They want to make this a nice hard climb for him.
He's truly amazing. He'll swing off as soon as this kicks up now, but what a bike rider.
He'll switch it straight into reverse gear and go from the front of the main field right to the back, but he can take the sweat off his brow and say, job done this afternoon. Wow, look at that. They've closed down the gap very, very dramatically. 30 seconds he's wiped away in no time.
Well, just as we see now, Jens start. That was it. That was the effort. He's delivered them. He's halved the gap, and now the legs have gone. Dangerous moments when you have to dodge round a tiring rider like that.
Just looking down the pack to see if I could spot the ochre jersey of Geraint Thomas. These guys now know race over for them. If you haven't got the legs at this point, you might as well try and conserve as much energy as possible, because tomorrow you've got to come out and do it again.
Yeah, well, the sprinters thinking about tomorrow. They've started conserving already more than half an hour ago. First time up, got dropped. As we see now, the Movistar rider, I think it's Kopecky, has now dropped off, left his teammate to go ahead. But the peloton is going to be all back together very shortly.
Red and black jerseys coming to the front, Robbie. That indicates to me that maybe Philippe Gilbert's going to have a dig this afternoon.
Possibly Gilbert, or maybe Steve Morabito. We've seen in the action in Stirling. He's quite close in the overall classification, so maybe they're trying to set something up for him.
Well, the breakaway just imploded there on the climb. As the riders come back from the lead group, they tried to make it. They put a lot of effort into it too. Now 2.7 kilometres to go, and it is still the attacks coming in. Now it's from George Bennett, the New Zealand rider. A big danger, George. He sits in 10th place overall
and Machado
in this race.
goes with the BMC rider.
And Machado, who finished third up this climb last year and third overall. He sits at the moment, Machado, just 15 seconds off the lead in the race.
Santa Amita who's gone with him, and that's a very big acceleration. There's a control coming at the front end of the peloton. No panic. It's Edvald Bosenhagen doing the work for Geraint Thomas, but the man in second position, Machado, is a very, very good climber. He's hit them nice and hard.
Well, this is when we start calculating seconds that could change it. If Machado was to win the 10-second win bonus, he would only need to finish 6 seconds in front of the race behind to take the lead, and he's being led up the climb here.
The other rider just getting onto the back is the good climber from Omega. It's Peter Velits, but look at the face. He's grimacing like anything. And again, no panic on board Edvald Bosenhagen. Experienced professional bike rider. He will try and nail them back here, but look at Machado.
He goes again, and then he goes again on top of that, but absolutely no panic by Sky. Geraint Thomas is happy enough to sit on the wheel of Edvald Bosenhagen. He's setting the pace, keeping it steady, keeping it regular. They know there's still some danger men behind.
Well, it is amazing.
Right behind.
Yeah, there is Bosenhagen, and right on his wheel is Geraint Thomas. Bosenhagen is the big faithful pacemaker here. All he's trying to do is to ease them back up to this leader. This is the attack, and he's holding it at the moment.
Well, Machado is looking for 15 seconds, but TJ Slachter from Blanco is right on the wheel of Geraint Thomas. He's in the place he needs to be, but that's a good way to take the climb for a big guy like Geraint Thomas. Have somebody go up at good old diesel turbo speed, because you don't get those peaks and troughs with the heart rate.
It's a very good scenario for Geraint Thomas. It's also a perfect scenario for TJ Slachter. We saw the finish he did in Stirling there, where he sprinted away from the rest of the bunch. If they have a steady ride to the top and it's going to be a sprint to the finish, then expect Slachter to come off the wheel. And if Thomas can't finish at least second, he'll lose the jersey.
Yep, that's what he'll have to do, but he's just sitting there at the moment. He knows exactly what he needs to do to keep himself at the top end of the leaderboard. Now Peter Velits grimacing at the front for Omega Pharma Quickstep, looking back to Machado. They're trying to see if they're opening up a gap, but I'd have to say, Robbie, they've got him pretty much pegged at the moment. Bosenhagen doing a great job.
He's got them pretty well pegged at the moment. Look down to the Radio Shack rider number 42.
Oh, watch
Ben
out,
Hermans.
watch out. Moreno's making a move now. He's in third place in the overall standings. He's just looking for 6 seconds. This is a move that now Geraint Thomas needs to respond to.
You cannot let the day end without giving it your best shot, and Javier Moreno in third place overall is trying to bridge now as Machado goes again here, followed by Steve Santa Marita, and then followed by Peter Velits. They're suffering badly though, Rob, and I'm not sure they can survive up to the top here.
Well, Bosenhagen has just not panicked. He's fairly confident he can just rope everything back in. Geraint Thomas sitting on his wheel. If Bosenhagen gets to the point where he feels he doesn't have things under control, a little flick of the elbow, he'll say, mate, Geraint, it's time for you to take care of business.
1.4 kilometers to the summit. Javier Moreno is contacting the leaders here. He lies third overall in this race. He wants 6 seconds, that's all. And they're both hit now out at Thomas. He's got to reply soon.
At some point, Thomas is going to have to do something, and I think he's now on the front. As he shuts this gap down, that provides a perfect springboard for Slachter to follow him up the climb, keep everything together. And as the wind picks up, I think the rider's going to be faced with a little headwind coming into the last corner as well.
It's amazing how the flags are standing straight now. They were dropped and drooped earlier, but now they're together and everything's blowing around up here. It's almost as if we're being hit by a tornado on top of the climb. It is an incredible change. This is going to hurt the attackers, I think, now. Macon Soleil moving up, everybody trying to get in on the act, but and still now it's being left to the man who leads this race in the ochre jersey. His team now have done all they can. It's back to the leader, and Geraint Thomas is having to close down himself. He's looking over his shoulder, Robbie. That cannot be a good sign.
Geraint Thomas just swung away from the front. We're going to see if that's just the front. Here goes Geraint.
Geraint wants to win. The man that won this race overall last year. At this stage last year, he was going wheel for wheel with Alejandro Valverde, and Geraint went on to win the race. Now, the other rider, the danger, Gorka Izagirre, has got the back wheel of Simon Geraint. It's everybody for everything now, and quite literally, every second counts here.
Well, I think Simon Geraint is feeling a little bit better. This is just a great move by him. They can let him go, but the guy in front of him, Moreno, they can't. They have to chase him.
And this is Moreno going for gold. Is Gerrans going to make it a perfect Australia day and give Orica Greenedge the first Australian win of the week in the Santos Tour Down Under? It's a huge effort by Gerrans, and he's coming up to the back wheel of Moreno.
He's looked over his shoulder, he's seen he's got a gap, and now he's going to punch it. The ideal scenario is to get to Moreno, rest for a moment, and then bash right over the top of him towards that finish line.
Well, he'll take the 10-second win bonus, which would help Geraint Thomas if he comes up. He's got to get over the Spanish rider first, who wants that 10 seconds. Then he only needs a gap of a few seconds to win the stage and take the lead.
Well, if he wants to win this thing, he's going to have to hold off Simon Gerrans, and look at Slachter has left Geraint Thomas behind, and he's up and over Simon Gerrans.
They've all hit Geraint Thomas as Tom Slachter has contacted. This is the man who's going for the race lead. The man who's the best young rider. Slachter is going. Gerrans has gone onto his back wheel, but he might be spoiling the fun for the Australian as we now head up toward the line. The face of Tom Slachter, and Gerrans goes. Gerrans wants this. The first Australian victory of the week, and it comes on Australia Day. Simon Gerrans, last year's winner, grits his teeth as he comes off this bend. This is the corner.
Come on, Simon. Get up there for Australia Day, mate. Slachter. Simon Gerrans.
Simon Gerrans gets it on the line. He gets the victory, and more importantly, protects the 10-second bonus of a second. Slachter, he gets 6 seconds, and he gets the race lead.
I think he's got this Tour won, but Simon Gerrans, well, happy Australia Day.
Well, it was perfect. He's been feeling a little bit rough all week. He said, wait and see on Saturday. We've waited and we've seen.
That is what a true champion does. They take the disappointment, they put it behind them, and then they come out and give it absolutely everything in their last possible chance. That was just a super classy ride.
Now, Tom Slachter was 5 seconds behind Geraint Thomas. He's got himself a 6-second time bonus. So he must be the leader of the race with 1 day to go. This young kid at 23 years of age. Just look at that, Robbie. You called it. He's your man.
Well, Simon Gerrans, he was here 12 months ago today. He was against Alejandro Valverde. He didn't go early enough last year, couldn't get around Valverde around this bend, and was just edged out. He made sure he led to the bend, but I think Tom Slachter has realised, I'm getting 6 seconds. I've created a gap behind me. I've got the race won, and it's Australia Day. He couldn't possibly win, could he?
Well, it is amazing. He's got the race lead, and that's a fantastic result for Orica Greenedge too, and the first Australian victory of the Santos Tour Down Under this week. So he's made amends. Last year's winner is back on the winner's podium, at least here on the old Wollonga Hill. That'll be a big congratulations for him from the team tonight. Four of their riders down in the mess at the finish in Tanunda yesterday, and they've bounced back.
This is exactly what the guys needed. They've had some ups and downs this week. The disappointment earlier in the week of not being on GC, then some good results from Matt Goss, then a crash. They came back in Stirling the other day after a disappointment, did a great team ride, and now to top it off with Simon Gerrans on top of old Wollonga Hill on Australia Day, it does not get any better.
It doesn't, not if you're Australian. If you're Welsh or British, it's not been too good, because at the end of the day, it looked as though Sky had everything under control. Boysenhagen did everything to keep Geraint Thomas in touch with the leaders, but when it came down to the end, well, it had to be Gerrans on the day, and Slachter congratulates him. Taking a few moments here to recover.
Simon, a little bit of a difficult start to the week today. Redemption, what a present for Australia Day.
Yeah, obviously I was pretty disappointed to drop out of contention on stage 2 for the overall, and had one chance to really make up for that, and that was today. So I'm rapt to win here on Australia Day. It's like it's a fantastic feeling, and a big thanks to my Orica Greenedge teammates. They laid it on the line for me today, so it was great to finish it off.
When the Spanish rider Moreno had gone, did you think it disappeared the chance of a victory, or did you never give up?
Well, as you see, I never gave up until I was right to the line, especially when the young Blanco guy jumped across to us and went straight past. I had to get straight on his wheel and try and come past him in the final. So
how does that feel? Last year you were second on this stage. It looks like Wollonga Hill is becoming the scene for Simon Gerrans.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess we've had 2 finishes up here, and I was second last year and then had a win this year. So it's a nice way to round out the week.
Does it make it a little bit sweeter because today is Australia Day and national holiday?
Yeah, for sure. It was absolutely fantastic crowd today. It was bigger than a stage at the Tour de France. Really, there were people around the whole course today cheering us on. It was a great atmosphere.
Well done.
Thanks, Paul.
Another great day in this amazing race here in South Australia, the Santos Tour Down Under. There's Luke Durbridge now just come in. His work done at the bottom of the climb to set it up for his teammate, and it all worked out for Simon Gerrans today as the defending champion. Let's have a look at the result first. What a time for the distance, 3:36 for almost 100 miles. Slechta in second. These are provisional, of course. Moreno is in third at 10. And looking down the list, top 10 completed by Ben Hermans, Thiago Machado in 5th place there. Show you any more? I'm not sure we have any more. Yes, we do. This is the situation overall. Moreno is second behind the new leader, Slechta. Geraint Thomas drops down from 1st into 5th. That wasn't meant to be. Jon Izagirre comes in at 4th place there. And I think we can go back to Paul Schuring because I think he's found Tom Gelter-Slechta.
Well, Tom, when you won the stage, Tom, around Stirling, it was a bit of a surprise to us, but today the team had all of their confidence in you.
Oh yeah, and I can only say that I'm really happy that I could do it today. So it's a big thanks for all the team, like everybody can see.
When you hit Old Wollonga Hill for the first time, did you still believe when we came round for the last ascent, you had it in your legs to get up here?
Yeah, I thought so. I felt the whole stage, I felt good. Actually, the whole week is going well, so I had all the confidence, and yeah, it's great to be again on the podium and with a leader jersey. It's incredible.
At 23 years of age, to take the overall lead in a race like this, in front of a crowd like this, it sort of sets you up to think about the Tour de France. It was a great day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's. I've never been on a podium in a stage race, and on Stirling was my first victory, so it's really an incredible week for me.
Now we have to get around and think about tomorrow because it's the final day. It's a city centre race, but you're feeling confident with the advantage you've got over the Spaniard, Moreno?
Yeah, I don't know what the time difference are on this moment, but the team showed today that they can help me from start to finish, so I have all the confidence.
Congratulations. Go and enjoy the awards.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was a tremendous ride, wasn't it, Robbie? Not just by him, but by the whole team. And Jack Bobridge, Graham Brown, covered in bandages, and yet he kept that man where he wanted him, at the head of affairs.
And that's the sort of riding that gives a young guy like this so much confidence to finish off the job.
So still the prize presentation to come down there, but the race is done, and we have a new race leader and the first Australian winner in Simon Gerrans today.
Channel 9's Wide World of Sports. I tell you what, the McLaren Vale to Old Wollonga Hill, the Battle of Old Wollonga Hill. Jayco Stage 5 here at the Santos Tour Down Under, and it did not disappoint. There are the aerial shots, the views today, absolutely wonderful, and the cycling itself, the competition, just beyond belief. It was Australia Day, and it was Australia's Day very much with the win for Simon Gerrans. But there's a few Europeans happy today because the Flying Dutchman, the 23-year-old Thomas Slechta, now has the ochre jersey, and he is into a very good position to be there tomorrow and win the 15th Santos Tour Down Under. We've got Phil, Paul and Robbie. Phil, first with you. It had it all, didn't it? The battle. You told me about it this morning and didn't disappoint.
Always a race for seconds. Everybody that had a chance to win this actually had a go on that climb. At the end of the day, Geraint Thomas was isolated and couldn't quite bridge the gap, and he slipped down the overall. But the winner, Simon Gerrans, well, what a great way to end Australia Day for him.
Well, I have to say that, you know, a guy like Geraint Thomas, because of the fact that Simon Gerrans, because the fact that last year he was only second here, beaten on the line by Alejandro Valverde. He was the defending champion. He had it in his gut here to win today. Yes, he was a little bit sick earlier on in the week, but today he had to come back and do it, especially when you add in the flavour of a national holiday, Australia Day as well.
And Robbie McEwen smiling just a little bit more today.
smiling more than ever today. I mean, it's the whole fairy tale. And Simon Gerrans, he knows this climb probably better than anybody else. He knows the importance of that last corner. He got edged out last year by Alejandro Valverde. This year he made no mistake. He went with Slachter. He waited till just before the corner, passed him, and then it didn't give Slachter any more room to the finish line to try and make a pass. It all came together. The Jayco sponsored Stage 5 of the Santos Tour Down Under, up Old Willunga Hill. Simon Gerrans redeeming himself, you know, really what he did today after how bad he said he felt. What a fantastic ride, and on Australia Day.
Yeah, it couldn't. The script has gone to plan. There is a slight little Dutch feel to it all, but let's have a look at the replays because all of our crew have done a wonderful job in putting it together.
Breaking away there, the lead car of Mike Turter, and it got off to an incredibly quick start today. It was a long way, 151.5 kilometres, but they were well clear.
Well, the first 45 minutes of the race was run off in excess of 50 kilometres an hour, but it took an awful long time for the real early morning breakaway to form at the front end of the pack. Groups kept going away and getting pulled back together, and when they went down to Aldinga Beach and Snapper Point for the first time, it looked as if it was race over and the break was about to form, but that wasn't quite the case.
No, they kept on closing it down until they finally established a leading group of 7 riders. The best man in it was Koen de Kort, 2 minutes 52 seconds behind overall, and it wasn't long before they'd recovered all that lost time as well. And Koen de Kort was the race leader on the road. Thomas de Gendt taking out the Jayco sprint at Snapper Point on that lap. Into Willunga, everybody was coming back together again, and once more the field beginning to implode. Once onto the first climb, the remnants of the breakaway was being brought back in. Thomas Majinski was the last man out front to be captured.
The Movistar team, they tried to light things up the climb of Old Willunga Hill the first time. Didn't quite happen for them. Nobody followed the move. They were just really hung out to dry, and it didn't have a big impact on what the field did around the lap.
But what it did was it set up a 4-man leading group, which possibly, if they survive to go to the climb next time, could be a launch pad for their man Moreno. Going down the descent away from Old Willunga Hill at speeds approaching 100 kilometres an hour.
Sky were quite certain of what they wanted to do tactically. Keep everything nice and steady for Thomas, keep him in contention, and only follow the important riders on the general classification.
It was Jens Voigt, though, with an incredible turn of speed, tried to pull his man, Thiago Machado, back into this race. And as they came to start the last climb, Jens had done everything to reduce this gap almost to nothing. It was a great piece of riding by the veteran, and then it was a free-for-all on the last climb of the Old Willunga Hill.
Well, Machado was one of the first men to go. He really knew that how he could perform on this climb because he did very well last year when he came to it, and he was followed very rapidly there by one of the riders from Omega Pharma Quickstep, Peter Velits, who was looking for the move. He's a great climber, Peter Velits. He's finished on the podium in the Vuelta a España, but fireworks on the climb, Robbie.
It really was. Radio Shack really lit things up. Machado went again and again and again. In Santa Marita went to him, went past him, and Machado just kept going in and out of the saddle, trying to build an advantage. But behind, Sky was staying cool all the time, with Edvald Boasson-Hagen setting the pace until this man, Moreno, said now it's really time to race.
Javier Moreno was only looking for a couple of seconds to try and get himself for the overall lead. He'd waited all day for this moment, and he could see this 3-man leading group as his launch pad to the overall victory. Machado, the Portuguese rider on the front there, doing everything he could to try and prize his way into the Oka jersey as well.
With Moreno coming up, he only needed 6 seconds advantage, and he was the new leader of the Tour, and it looked like to be the most likely to succeed here, but there were other ideas. As the hill went on, the riders started to close in. An incredible job being done behind by Edvald Boasson-Hagen.
It was at that very point that Edvald Boasson-Hagen his work was done, and he left it up then to Geraint Thomas to take care of things by himself. And as he started to get into a little bit of difficulty, and all the general classification riders started to look at each other, Simon Gerrans saw his moment.
Wearing number 1 on his back as defending champion of this race from last year, he knew he had to get to the wheel of Javier Moreno if he wanted to try and get himself the victory here on Australia Day, and he did a great job. But all of a sudden, out of the confusion came Thomas Slachter, the young rider, 23 years of age, 2nd place in the overall standings at the start of the day.
Demonstrating the same power he demonstrated at Stirling, where he won won the stage there. But this was Australia Day, and there's no more incentive required by an Australian than to win on this stage. And remember, no Australian had won a stage this year of the Santos Tour Down Under. That was all about to change, but that second place was all Tom Slechta needed to become the next leader of this tour.
Yeah, and that is the scene here. A lot of noise, thousands and thousands of people again, and that is the results for the stage.
Slechta getting in the same time as Simon Gerrans. Moreno hung on for third and getting 10 seconds there. Izagirre, he will have moved up overall with a 4th place finish. This is all too good, except, of course, for poor Geraint Thomas. He had to do it all himself in the end, and he wasn't able to. Let's have a look at the overall situation. The new leader with a day to go, Tom Hjelte Slechta. And Moreno at 13 seconds. Ben Herman comes up to third. Izagirre up to 4th. Geraint Thomas down to 5th. 29 seconds, I'm afraid, is too much to recover now.
So Tom Slechta, the Oka jersey, it has been the battleground, hasn't it, this second last day of the tour in the past?
Yes, it has, and normally those gains should be enough when we go down to Adelaide tomorrow. A little climb, Montefiore Hill, and there's a chance there to try and jump away, but history shows usually your gains today are what you keep.
I was going to say, Robbie, I thought it was a bit of a stranger penultimate ascent of Willunga Hill, but obviously everybody had their tactics lined up in the back of their minds, and that was a bit of an explosion down towards the end.
Oh, that really was one of the fastest ascents of old Willunga Hill I have ever seen, and it was great to see Simon Gerrans get across the line. He's such a good professional. He saved the team again, and I think the only excitement left is I don't think we're going to see a change in the overall classification, but can somebody beat Andre Greipel tomorrow in Adelaide City Circuit?
Well, Simon Gerrans, he won't retain the Oka jersey this year at the Santos Tour Down Under, the 15th Santos Tour Down Under. We've just had the Jayco Stage 5 from McLaren Vale to Old Willunga Hill. He doesn't win the Santos Tour Down Under, but he won the day today, Australia Day. We'll be back with a presentation. The colour and the movement of the Santos Tour Down Under. We are in our 15th year, the eyes of the cycling world here. Of course, today it was Simon Gerrans with a victory. An outstanding win for him, just on his shoulder and patting him on the back, that the 23-year-old young man from the Netherlands, Thomas Slechta, who heads into the final day as the shortest of hot favourites to be in the Oka jersey and the winner of the 15th Santos Tour Down Under.
Well, there's the massive crowd down there now, waiting first of all to welcome on board the stage winner, the first Australian winner this week. We can hear Jimmy Jakes announce it. Let's listen to him. That says it all, Paul, doesn't it? Simon Gerrans, who had a brilliant start to last year by winning the national title in Australia, then winning this race, then winning the biggest classic in the world, Milan San Remo in March. He's back now.
It just goes to show how tough a professional bike rider has to be. He was psychologically prepared to try and defend his title here at the Santos Tour Down Under. He was struck down by a slight illness, and that really is tough for a guy, but to fight back like that was magic. And he said today that today, out on the roads, it was almost like riding a stage of the Tour de France.
Oh, the atmosphere out around the course today was just magnificent, and Simon Gerrans, he feeds off that energy as well. He just knows that that was his one chance and he was going to go out and get it. And you see him at the top of the leaderboard for the stage in front of Tom Hjelte Slechta on the same time. They put quite a healthy gap into the rest with Moreno at 10 seconds. The big loser of the day, of course, Geraint Thomas, not in the top 10 and losing enough seconds to push him down the leaderboard overall. As we got to the finish, we saw Simon Gerrans not make the mistake he was sucked into last year by Valverde. He got around Slechta before the corner, held him off to the finish line, and Slechta knew, I've won this overall.
Well, he had a dress rehearsal last year and he got it right this year, but now he's going to, I think, enjoy that victory tonight when he gets himself back down to Adelaide, come back out and fight around the streets of LA tomorrow for the City Council street circuit. But a new race overall leader with the youngster, Thomas Slechta.
Yes, and obviously he keeps his young rider's jersey as top of the classification as well. Let's see from him now. And there he is, the young man on the block, 23 and a half years of age, He came here as an unknown cyclist. He's going back as one of the best known cyclists around the world now. And another sign of the youth triumphing in the rebirth of cycling.
I was just going to say that to Robbie McEwen. It's good to see these youngsters, 20 years of age, 21, 22, 23 years of age, starting to come through now.
It's great to see these young guys come through and make their mark very early in their career. A couple of days ago, this guy had his first professional win. Now he's about to win the first World Tour race of the season. It is really good to see. Blanco team had complete confidence in him from the beginning of this week.
Let's have a look at the overall standing then. Moreno is up into second place, 13 seconds up, but the new leader in the Skoda King of the Mountains, Ben Hermans, is in third place. He's promoted. Izagirre is up to fourth. Geraint Thomas goes from first to fifth. Tiago Machado finished third in this race last year, is now in sixth place for tomorrow.
Now, Rob, you've won 12 stages of this tour over the course of your career. How is Simon Gerrans feeling? You work with him?
I work with the Orica Green Edge team. I work with Simon Gerrans. I know the boys really well. I rode the race with them last year, was part of the team that helped Simon get the overall win. He did most of the hard work himself, I've got to say. But he's just feeling pretty chuffed at the moment. After such a setback earlier in the week, when he came with such high expectations, to really turn that around, that he feels a bit better, but mentally that he just stays so cool and confident. He knows he's done the work, he knows this climb, and he is a very determined little bike rider.
How much did that heat the other day in the win for Thomas Schlachter? How much does confidence help, Phil, that win coming into today?
Well, when he won at Stirling, I mean, that was an incredible win because he beat the two top riders in the world. He beat Matthew Goss and he beat the world champion Philippe Gilbert. And he didn't just beat them by half a wheel. He was a full length ahead. He was able to freewheel and salute the sky. So that was his confidence booster. Now he's confirmed he really is a great rider.
Yeah, but also when you're in a situation when you've got a team, a bunch of teammates who are working for you and setting themselves up and setting you up for the final climb of the day, that also is, it puts responsibility on your shoulders. Even though the shoulders might be only 23 years of age, he knew that if they worked like that for him, he needed to try and come up with the goods.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of miles away from where he grew up, Thomas Schlachter. But whatever he thought of Australia before this Santos Tour Down Under, he'll have a special place in his heart in a few weeks' time. This is Channel 9's Wide World of Sports. Well, not a few weeks' time, tomorrow afternoon. We'll take a break and be back. Channel 9's Wide World of Sports. There he is, Simon Gerrans on Australia Day from the Orica Green Edge team. And Robbie McEwen, you've spoken to him. He was sick this week. He was down and out. Of course, there's Thomas Schlachter in the Oka jersey. Let's not downplay his efforts. He's been absolutely outstanding and his career has turned on its head. He has found his way in the big-time cycling world here in Australia. But back to Simon Gerrans for a moment, if we can, because it had been an ordinary week for him.
It had. I mean, if you understand how much work Simon Gerrans had put into being in top shape at this race. He was the defending champion. He came in, he wanted to do a similar ride to last year. And when he got sick and had a rough second day, he tumbled out of the overall standings, and it would seem at that moment that all the hard work over the last few months has all come to nothing. And but Simon is a professional athlete. He's a very, very good one, a very determined rider, and he stays cool, and he just knew how to turn it around, wait for his body to recover, to get better, and he knew that this stage was what was his one big chance to really redeem himself. And I mean, we haven't seen an Australian win this week, and it's rare that it takes this long for an Australian to get up there, but I think it's all been worth it to see a win like that one on Australia Day.
Paul?
Well, I have to tell you, you know, professional athletes, professional cyclists, they know how to bounce back. It's amazing how they can bounce back from injury, from illness, but it's all in the mind, really. Cyclists are tough guys, and he knew he had to do something. As Robbie said, he knew his one chance. When he got blown away when we went over Corkscrew Hill, his one remaining chance was here. He's been thinking about this for days, and he got it all right on the moment.
Phil, you coined it as the Battle of Old Wollonga Hill, and we've been talking about it all week.
Yeah.
Look, this is new to me. I don't know cycling anywhere near as well as any of you guys, but you said Old Wollonga Hill, and it gives us a good opportunity to talk about what happened on this hill, because it had it all, didn't it? It had teams going forward, different individuals trying to play the chess that is cycling.
Yeah, well, let's have a look how it happened, because it came to the last lap that was virtually neutralised first time up the climb, and I thought they were playing right into the hands of Geraint Thomas. But when Machado attacked, this was the man most likely to succeed, and he was opening a winning gap. I thought he was winning the race right now.
Well, it looked that way. It looked as if it was going to go to the Radio Shack rider Machado, who's third overall in this race last year. Everything seemed to be going right. Trying to come across the gap there was Peter Velez, again, also a very strong rider. Though at this time, this is when Team Sky, Robbie, they really started to crumble.
That's the thing, it looked to be under control with Edvald Boasson-Hagen leading the peloton for Geraint Thomas. But when Moreno from Movistar attacked, got across to this group, really put Geraint Thomas under pressure. Boasson-Hagen's work was done at the front and left Geraint Thomas to try and clean everything up and control the peloton. And that's where the wheels started to fall off and the attacks really came thick and fast.
That was when the moment came for Simon Gerrans to say, right, guys, I want to win this stage now. He could see the small group in front of him. He knew he had to leapfrog across that gap, make the contact with those leading riders, and then that was the moment he started to lay down his foundations for his victory here this afternoon.
And this was the next move, really. Moreno going clear now. He only needed to top two finish, and he would have been the next winner of this Tour tomorrow. Gerrans was picking his moment. He wasn't a marked man by anybody. He's lost too much time. His ambition was simple, to win the day, and nothing was going to stop him. Moreno was trying to win the race, and then Moreno looked round, saw Gerrans coming, and saw the peloton right there. And the peloton was now in trouble. The Sky team had cracked, Boasson-Hagen had gone, and Geraint Thomas couldn't handle all of these attacks.
Well, you know what, Robbie, if this had not been Australia Day, if this had not been Australia, he might not have been able to make the junction there to Moreno.
I think Australia Day, or not, to be honest, Simon Gerrans, after that disappointment and this being the big chance, he was going to ride this like it could have been the last ride of his life. And as he went across that gap and Geraint Thomas started to crack behind, Tom Jelte-Slagter saw his chance. Where we thought Thomas would need to offload Slagter, it was quite the opposite. Slagter rocketed across the gap, picked up Simon Gerrans, who has not missed a beat, looks over his shoulder, sees him coming, gets into the wheel and knows that he's going to ride all the way to the finish line to win the overall.
But look at the power of this young man. 30th in the Tour of Italy last year, so we knew he could climb hills, but the power of him on this comparatively short climb, he was explosive. He'd realised Thomas was finished and he went for it, and off the bend. This time this year, Gerrans knew the way round that corner, and once he got round the corner, it was a matter of just holding off Slagter. Watch Slagter change direction. He was going to go on the right, the same mistake Gerrans made last year. He had to swing to the inside, and by doing that, of course, he could only make second on the stage.
Well, that was the important time for him. He knew he wanted to go around that corner in first place, and that's what he got. He took the line around the corner. That was his race today.
And Paul, you had the opportunity to talk to Simon afterwards. Give us a bit of a reflection, because you no doubt had the chance to talk off camera as well.
No, he was extremely happy with the fact that the team, he said, had done the job for him this afternoon. It was all about the team. Orica Green Edge, they set him up perfectly. They buried themselves to the bottom of the climb. 39-year-old Stuart O'Grady, and he was very, very happy to get that in his back pocket, Simon Gerrans, here this afternoon. Finally, a bit of redemption, because I think if he hadn't had that little asthmatic attack in the early part of the week, he could have ended up being the overall winner.
Yeah, it's got a fairy tale edge, this story today on Australia Day. Simon Gerrans, the Australians had been non-existent pretty much up to this point. He's won today. And, of course, Thomas Slagter in the ochre jersey. We expect him to keep that tomorrow, but it's all about the sprinters. Andre Greipel, the gorilla made his way to the Barossa. He'll be in the city of Adelaide tomorrow. Stage 6, the City Council Street Circuit. Always great scenes.
Well, it's 90 kilometres as the riders continue on, and it's been a good race. It's a very interesting race, the street race. It's 90 kilometres. That's the speed these boys are going round Adelaide. They're going to be just over 2 hours. And don't forget, Andre Greipel, if he wins, not only will it be increasing his personal record in this race, he's looking for his 100th win as a professional tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what he's going to look for, to get his centenary of victories. But there'll be a lot of guys queuing up, and maybe after the Orica Green Edge victory today by Simon Gerrans, Matty Goss will find to get himself that little bit of edge.
That's what we'll be looking for, Green Edge to get the edge with Matt Goss. After a big crash yesterday, got through today, they're looking for a big finish.
Now there we go, of course, tomorrow, Stage 6, Channel 9. You can watch it live again, and 9MSN. Go check that, because there's some wonderful work being done there, and you can get all the updates. And the highlights tonight, of course, of what happened here at Wollonga Hill nightly on Channel 9. You just check your local guides. We have about 5 different time zones in this country, so it's always important to check your local guides. Now, quickly to you, Robbie, any chance if Greipel wins tomorrow and he goes 2 ahead of you, put the Lycra back on and compete again? Can we get a breaking story?
No, I think I'll just enjoy the memories.
Okay. Paul, about today and about tomorrow, quickly?
Well, today was phenomenal. I think Simon Gerrans summed it up. Today was just like any stage of the Tour de France, a mountain stage of the Tour de France. Everybody out there had a great day, the start of the day on Australia Day.
Last word for you, Phil?
It's the crowds. The crowds were absolutely fantastic again, and well done to them for turning out in their tens of thousands. Tomorrow, Tom Slechta will win this race.
Phil, Paul, Robbie, it's an absolute pleasure to work with you. We've seen a grown man in a nappy with a dummy today. The crowds have been absolutely unbelievable. Simon Gerrans winning on Australia Day. Thomas Slechta with a special place of Australia in his heart. From all of us here at Channel 9's Wide World of Sports, see you soon.
The first Australian victory of the week, and it comes on Australia Day.
This has been another presentation from Nine's Wide World of Sports.